the mayor was going to look into some different alternatives. And I participated in all 4 of the consultant interviews for the new general plan that will be kicked off shortly, right, Mike? Yeah. So we had some good interviews, and a selection was made, and when that contract is signed, we will let everybody know. That's all.
Okay, thanks, Jeannie.
Sounds great.
You're up, Mark.
I was also part of the general plan selection. I thought that was a really good process. I enjoyed that a lot. I thought that was really interesting. Very busy month. We attended the Utah League of Cities and Towns, Amy and the mayor and I. The mayor did a wonderful job presenting to those who attended about, a highway runs through it. So cities that have highways that run through the middle of town. It was really interesting. It was good. I attended a lot of workshops, and I think there were 3 that, well, actually 2 that really stood out. I don't want to spend too much time because I have a lot of other stuff to cover, but one was about running a council meeting. And
You're welcome.
yeah, it was interesting because everything that this professional city manager brought up, we do. So I felt very good about what we're doing at City Council because all the things that were suggested, we do. Yeah. The one thing that did stand out to me is he said, when you have public comment before the meeting starts for questions and comments, it is not open mic time. It is time for people to bring concerns, and I appreciated Hayden's concern today. Where'd you go? Right here. Thank you. You are super appropriate with what you said. That's something we can take care of for sure. So, but otherwise, that's a really interesting meeting. Their estimation of the best possible city council meeting was 2.5 minutes. That's how long it should be.
Whoa!
I know. I was just like, what? You can't get this the business
That's not long enough
city
for the
business
public
done in
comment.
2.5 minutes. So yeah, but they emphasized that this meeting is our meeting, so it's the council's meeting. It's not the public's meeting. It's for the council to conduct city business, and that's the most important thing that we do while we're here is we conduct city business. And it's essential that gets done, or else things don't happen in the city. So one of the other workshops I went to was on water use, and that was really interesting because I also attended the Crockett Watershed Project meeting that they're talking about Logan River and the diversion for the Crockett canals and for Little Logan River, and so that was very appropriate as well too. And I think with the Crockett Watershed Project, they're leaning currently towards the first dam division option. There are 3 options on the table, so that's where they're leaning right now, but they're still assessing all the information. So that was an interesting meeting as well too, and I felt like very productive. Also, this week I attended the hazard mitigation kickoff for Cache County for the hazard mitigation. This is for like natural disasters, so we can have a plan in place to mitigate any risks that we have that we can identify. And that was a great meeting. It was really well attended and represented from all parts of our community. But the one thing they did call for was more participation. They need more entities to participate, not just cities, but essential businesses and associations and like the canal companies, anyone who's going to be impacted by natural disaster for something that's really important. And so we're going to be trying to reach out to more and more people to get input from them to try and identify all the risks that we have that we can possibly mitigate. Can't mitigate an earthquake, but there's a lot of things we can do for our floodplain and fire prevention as well too. So we had great representation from the city mayor, so really great representation from the city there. Also participated in the Day of Service, which was a great event. Worked on 3 projects, so.
Mark actually coordinated
coordinated.
a big chunk of those volunteers for his faith group, so
Yeah.
thank you, Mark, for doing that.
It was a really great day, and it was amazing to see how many people came out to participate. So, and a lot of projects for Logan City, but a lot of projects for the Cache Humanitarian Center as well too. So that was a really, really great day to see how many people in our community are willing to put their time in and participate in what's happening in the city. And then I didn't make it to economic development. We were out of town, but I hope that meeting went well. If you wanted to share with that.
I can report on.
I figured you might do that. And I've spent enough time talking, so we'll move on.
All right, thanks, Mark. All right, we will now move on to our action items. We do have 6 public hearings this evening, so lots of opportunity for those who'd like to weigh in. Our first public hearing is ordinance 24-16. This is the TEA rezone. We have been contacted by the proponent for this rezone. They had a family medical emergency, and the proponent is not able to be here tonight. We will still be holding the public hearing, but I'm hoping that the council would be amenable to us also allowing them time to communicate with us, and so perhaps postpone the vote for 2 weeks, but to hold the public hearing, because I'm assuming there's many of you who are here tonight who would like to weigh in on that. So we can discuss that as things go on. But Russ, are you going to walk us through that, please?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Just a kind of a brief refresher. This is an application called TEA rezone, and the Planning Commission heard this last month. Let's see. So it's on First East and between 3rd and 4th South. It's a group of 3 properties, just about an acre. And the long-range plan calls the entire block to be commercial, but the current zoning is split. So the east side of the block is residential, and the west side of the block is a combination of commercial and town center zone. The request is to upzone the property to commercial. The Planning Commission was split. Actually, they were 5-2. I think they feel like maybe it's a sequencing issue with them. The 2 dissenting votes were not comfortable with the middle of the block rezoning first. Most folks feel like it's a matter of timing, so it's not a matter of if, it's just when. Maybe now is not the appropriate time. The applicant does not have a project planned at this point. This is simply a rezone request. And we did get a letter before Planning Commission, and then at Planning Commission, we had 3 folks get up and make comments. They were mixed. 1 was in favor, and 2 were kind of opposed. So, any questions?
Russ, do you know if any of those comments were from people who are like adjacent to the property or within the 300 feet, or are they from people
Yes,
that were outside?
2 of the comments were from folks that live on the block. 1 to the south that actually lives on 400 South, and then the other was directly adjacent to the north.
Do you have a bigger map also of like this area? Because it just shows half of just the 1 block north, and what the zoning is currently.
So
The zone right now is cut right in half in the block.
On this one, yes, but I'm talking about the blocks to the north. Because
Oh,
I know
okay.
there's a lot more commercial just to the north there, so.
I think those are they,
Oh, you want,
The block,
So once you hit 200 South, it goes to TC2
T2.
zoning, where that L59 project, there's also a dentist office that's being planned
So
and
from-
constructed.
from 200 to 300 is NR6, but then before that, it's TC2.
Correct.
Okay. And it's commercial all the way south from there.
Yeah, so there's 2 blocks here that are still NR6. From 400 South all the way down to the city boundary is commercial.
Can you tell us more? I understand that back in 2011 to 2013, it was commercial already.
Yeah, so the city initiated some upzoning along this corridor as well as First West. Then we went back and re-noticed everything and kind of went back property by property, and this area was downzone. There were a lot of residents that felt like it wasn't ready to go to commercial, but it was upzoned for about a couple years there in about the 2011 time frame. Yes.
So the city itself decided to downzone it after checking with them?
Correct.
Is there an alternate projection per se that would not call this commercial, that would not see this area of the city as commercial, that would see it as residential?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, I think that, I'm not going to put words in Ernesto's mouth, but the fact that we're revisiting the general plan could alter the future land use plan. It could either reinforce the commercial aspect, or it could say, nope, this is better off something else. So that does exist as we revisit the general plan.
Could go mixed use.
Yes.
Yeah, it could go,
It could go TC2.
So I guess the question is, currently the FLUP calls it for it to be commercial.
Right.
Is there a significant possibility that it might be called out as something else on the new FLUP?
that's hard to say.
That's the question that you're asking.
That is the question.
Right, but that's the question that Ernesto is asking, is what is the possibility of a change in the
I
FLUP?
would say 50-50.
Yeah.
How's that?
Is that not your question, Ernesto?
That is a question, yes.
I think it's a fair
Is that what you were asking?
And is there any chance that this would
50-50, yeah.
be identified as a future residential, state residential, rather than
Right.
lean towards the commercial type of?
Or it could be zoned to higher density
Higher
residential.
density.
Yeah, I would be
Overall.
surprised if it's single-family residential in the future, long-range plan. But yeah, it could be a multifamily or a mixed use.
Yeah. With the amount of traffic we have on that street, it doesn't make sense for it to. But that's just me.
Anyway, yeah. I just, yeah, when I was sitting listening to this, the discussion, one of my concerns and questions to Mike was, is it appropriate for us to be doing that type of a rezone when we're also engaging in a revision of the general plan? How do they cross and coincide? So,
I'm going to think about it. Any other questions for Russ before we open up the public hearing? Nope, okay. This is a public hearing for ordinance 24-16. If anyone would like to come and speak to it, please come to the podium, state your name, your location. Actually, before I do that, how many people here are intending to speak to this ordinance? If you could just give me a show of hands, I'm just trying to figure out time-wise how much time we need.
just a couple.
Just a few, okay. Oh, and I got a couple other hands tentatively raised, yeah. So yeah, if at all possible, if you could keep your comments to 2 minutes, then that would be great. But yeah, the floor is the public's.
I'm coming first as Dr. Gail Yost for one reason. When we have a split block like that, it is appropriate because Main Street is commercial. But and I've talked to the city council before about this, to have our future land use plan on our block, just one block north of this. I live in the middle of that block. To have that counted as commercial when we have a very tight neighborhood over there. We know the people across the street, we know the people up and down the block, and even people further up the street, up north. Socialization is important in a neighborhood. Protecting one another is very important in a neighborhood. Protecting the children, protecting the elderly. We need to do it together. It can't be done, oh, we'll send somebody over. We have to be the ones to do that. And I have a neighbor who just had a fall a couple of months ago, and she's healing now, and she's just a year older than I am. But it really took her out of commission for a while, and she's an artist. And she broke her right hand in the fall that she took. Now, the neighbors all came together, and her family all came together to take care of her while she was mending. And she's been doing much better because of that. That's just one point of view. Now, the Gail Yost point of view, not Dr. Yost, is that we already have enough traffic and that we already know of our neighbors really well. We've even in the past had water fights across the street. Now, it's not as possible anymore because of the bad traffic, but we used to have water fights across the street. We know our neighbors, and it's important to have that strength. When we first moved into this house 45 years ago, I was 8.5 months pregnant, and we had been told that the place we were renting was not going to be available to us anymore. And I was, of course, panic-stricken, nesting urge. It was our third baby. I had 2 children and husband, and my parents were coming to help, but there was no place to go. This house has been a haven for us, and I expect it will be a haven for some generations from now, because I have at least one grandson who's interested in inheriting. This cannot stand to have commercial in the middle of a block when we have such a tight residential area. And it is, actually my house is, I don't think NR6, it's NR4. I think it's a quarter acre. We have a quarter acre there.
No, but it's NR6.
Is it NR6 now? We have this wonderful, beautiful, big property that he's even built another building behind our house. We have history. We even had our, as you know, our church taken down because of an earlier earthquake, and it was no longer considered safe. And a dentist bought it and wanted it TC2 just for his dental office. And then he changed his mind and decided to add apartments. We've had enough chipping away at our neighborhood. We've had all kinds of things up and down our street on First East especially. We don't need any further. We are not downtown. We are the edge of the neighborhood. And there always has to be an edge. Even if you infiltrate closer, there's an edge to the neighborhood. Are you going to constantly threaten the edges of a neighborhood when we still have property downtown that needs to be fixed? We still have property west of downtown that is usable. West of, on 3rd South, we used to go down 3rd South.
Yeah,
To the west. There are plenty of places that do not need NR6 or single-family homes. There are plenty of places for commercial use. And as we go to more a wider area of the city, we need more of those commercial places in different parts of the city so they can be accessed by the local neighbors.
Thanks, Gail.
And what you said about
Gail,
the general plan,
I need to cut you off.
my husband wanted to know what is now on the property. Are there houses?
There's 2 homes, and then there's vacant land as well.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Dr. Yost. Craig, you need to be louder with the 3 minutes.
What did he do, this? I didn't hear anything.
I didn't hear anything either. I looked over.
Just let the buzzer go off.
My buzzer's really quiet.
Okay,
Buzzer go off.
Hi, I'm Matthew Kozłowski, and so I talked about this. I also recommend that if we want meetings to be 2 minutes and 30 seconds, that you don't run for re-election and just replace your position with a rubber stamp instead. I have some good programming skills. I can say if money, then yes.
Everybody agreed with that.
So, anyways, we have a bunch of traffic that's going down there that seemed like it was a fine justification in your mind to switch it over to commercial instead, as opposed to looking at the public transit option of limiting the amount of cars on the road. I'm a fan of keeping it split too as well, because it means that the road that's specifically there is residential. We can increase the density, but switching straight to commercial is a bad call, because how are people going to get to the commercial, except by crossing a major through-there that has large amounts of traffic in it. Yeah, I think it's just we need to prioritize doing higher density as opposed to switching automatically to commercial. This divide between, like the stretching between single family and commercial is causing all of the renters and everything like that, since you guys don't think that having public apartments or housing options, like, higher density housing options is viable. And I'm in opposition to land leaching in the first place, but yeah, we just need to start considering more diverse options that aren't just commercial and higher road traffic concessions and single family isolation and mentality. Anyways, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matthew.
I'm Judge Muller from Logan. I've been looking at this, even to the drive down there, take a look at it, because it's old swampy around neighborhoods of the island, one of my youth. This project really seems like a poker hand move. So, because of the possibilities and all that. The truth about it, though, is that area is really still recovering from all the Deloitte development that's happening south of there, with all of his development. And I mean, I remember when 4 South didn't go through. You'd have to take a right and hit 4 South to hit Main Street. You couldn't go past there. It was a dead end. But that road's not ready, honestly. I'm not opposed to putting commercial into it. I actually helped, with I guess it was a spot zone with a commercial project going up on 2nd. But it was because that type of project fit the area. There was a reason behind it. They just had to do something different to get what they wanted accomplished. This is it's masked on, the T, whoever the T are. Right now it's 2 homes, and I'm pretty sure there are probably renters in there. You pass it, and those people are probably going to get food, and so for whatever reason, it's just not ready. The area's not ready. We need to recover. So
Thanks, Josh.
Can I make one clarifying comment? There are 2 proponents. One of the proponents could not be here. The other one does actually live in one of the houses. So,
Yep, he does.
Anybody else like to speak to ordinance 24-16 today? All right, seeing nobody, I will bring it back to the council for action.
Before we discuss, I know both of the proponents very, very well, and their mother and mother-in-law. So I'm just letting everybody know that I know them.
Oh, okay.
I don't have any interest in this project, but
Like you have a personal
I have a personal
with them.
relationship with them, yes.
Okay, it's not your mother-in-law, though.
It is not my mother-in-law.
so I
Thank you for
would,
clarifying that, Amy.
I would like to say to the council that I think that it would be appropriate for us to be able to at least have the proponent have the opportunity to communicate with us before we make this type of decision. So I would be perfectly willing to propose that we put it off for put it off for 2 weeks, and then come back to it with whatever information we garner from the public, anybody who would care to let us know, and/or the proponents.
Okay.
So,
Is that a motion?
Yes,
or-
ma'am.
That's a motion.
Move for continuance for 2 weeks. I'll second that.
Okay. With or without public hearing? Just
Without a public hearing.
Okay. And you're good, you're seconding? that?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion on that?
Hearing from the proponent.
Yeah, I guess the proponent could be public though, but.
And Mark, just to clarify, you're not recusing yourself, you're just
No,
declaring.
just declaring that I've just got a relationship, yeah.
Any other comments, questions? Right. All those in favor of postponing? Continuing, I can never remember the words. Continuing ordinance 24-16 to October 1st with no public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ordinance 24-16 is continued to October 1st without a public hearing. Our next public hearing is on ordinance 24-17. This is a down zone of the VL 364 area. Hi Russ, welcome back.
Hey, thanks. So this property is directly adjacent. Just to the west, it's 2 properties, and it totals about 1.5 acres. And it has 2 structures. Actually, there's an accessory structure there. They were built in the early 1980s as a motel. And then a few years ago, it was converted to housing. And in order to complete that project, it required the TC1 zone. And so this area was upzoned. It did not follow the long-range plan, and we upzoned it to TC1. But the intention all along, and the applicant was well aware of it, is that we would downzone this project once he received all of his permits and got his grandfathering. And the downzoning would mean that if in the future it's sold and redeveloped, it would be redeveloped in a commercial manner rather than a TC1 manner, which is, very tall, very compact. So that's the project. This one flew through Planning Commission. 7-0 was the recommendation. We haven't received written comments. We did receive a verbal comment at Planning Commission, but it was basically in support.
Any other questions for Russ before we open the public hearing?
No.
All right, this is a public hearing on ordinance 24-17. If you'd like to speak to this, please come to the podium, state your name, where you live, and please limit your comments to 2 minutes.
Matthew Falcosi, live in Logan, so this is the same block as the previous one, correct?
It's the back side of it, yeah.
So previously being pitched and considered as being an even split for commercial and then R6 on the last one. So again, I'm more of a fan of higher density, so if this is allowing for housing to stay there, I'm in opposition to switching it straight over to commercial instead, keeping it a town center one. What else was there? Oh yeah, I also am not a fan of having the proponent speak after public comment. Seems like getting leverage in.
Well, they're not going to have public hearing time. They're just going to have the opportunity
That's
to.
what I'm saying. There's no public comment after the hearing what the proponent's perspective unintended plans are. But anyway,
If
yeah.
the city council has questions for the proponent or like more information for the proponent, then they can ask questions at that time.
But no, the public.
The public hearing time is tonight.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. And then the proponents are here, which aren't even the residents necessarily, but yeah. Anyways, thank you for your time.
You're welcome, Matthew.
Madam Chair,
How much housing does commercial?
Yeah, so can we make a clarification? Because I think there's sometimes a misunderstanding that commercial doesn't allow housing. But commercial zoning allows, can you clarify for us, what kind of housing?
It does allow housing, but it's multi-story and it's upper floor housing so that the ground floor is reserved for commercial.
So it'd be higher density housing.
Yes.
Do we have any
it can be up-
examples in the city that come to mind?
It can be up to 30 units per acre.
Okay.
We have some live workspace, I think, out, don't we? That have commercial on the bottom and residential potentially. It was zoned that way.
Yeah, most of our vertical is mixed-use zoning. I can't think of a commercial housing project right off the top of my head, but it's possible.
But you could build,
It is
just
possible.
because this is getting rezoned.
That one was rezoned to mixed use.
Ah, wasn't? That's right, okay.
But just because this is getting rezoned to commercial possibly, doesn't mean it's excluding housing in the future. There
Right.
could
It could.
still have housing. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Madam Chair. Yes, it's still public comment.
The use that exists
Stop talking.
today stays, but if
for some reason in the future, they tore down the motel and wanted to do something else, it would be commercial.
It could be commercial or housing in the commercial zone.
All right, let's let our public hearing continue, guys. Sorry.
Yes, I'm stopping talking. Sorry, public.
I'm definitely just Dr. Yost, PhD in Family and Human Development. The program that they did by taking over this motel was especially for housing people who couldn't afford great housing. It's been a wonderful project. It's actually an ideal for other projects if we can get other people to do it. And I've been part of the Homeless Council before Amy came on because I asked her, and she was most generous in giving her time to us, and she has been great. But the Homeless Council knows how much we are in need of more of these low-income housing projects. And I think bringing it down to commercial, I would say, okay. The only problem I see is I hope they never sell it to somebody for a commercial project because we need this kind of housing here so badly. Anyway, that's my PhD take on it, okay?
Thank you, Dr. Yost. Would anyone else care to speak to ordinance 24-17? Seeing nobody, I'll bring it back to the council for action.
I'll move for approval of ordinance 24-17.
I'll second the motion.
Any questions, comments before we vote? All right, all those in favor of ordinance 24-17, Mr. Bill 364 Downsville, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ordinance 24-17 passes.
Thank you, Russ.
Our next public hearing is on a code amendment. This is ordinance 24-18. Mike, this is a big unwieldy ordinance, so it's several components. Do you want to walk us through it?
No,
We're going to make you anyway.
I know. I won't go through a lot of it. I will try to hit the highlights. How's
Please,
that?
that sounds perfect, yeah, because there's basically 3 areas.
Yeah, so ordinance 2418's got 3 elements to the overall amendment package. The first deals with home occupations, and for us, it was just kind of cleaning up some of the language in there, increasing the foot traffic, clarifying parking, storage, things like that. That one seemed to be pretty easily understood. The second element was accessory dwelling units, and we talked about an ADU. It's basically a secondary housing unit on a property. Our current language only allows internal ADUs, so your basement, add-on, but it's generally associated with that primary structure. What we landed on, well, and the other big part of that is we have an area of exclusion around Utah State campus that goes from 2nd East to 16th East, 14th North to the river. And there's some other nuance to that, but what we landed on was allow for ADUs of all types, citywide in all zones, basically get rid of the exclusionary map, modify the parking a little bit, and then also, like for external ADUs, which would be basically a detached accessory dwelling unit or a converted garage or something like that, add some standards for that, basically behind the house, in the rear side of the yard, meet the setbacks. There's a maximum size associated with that, 50% of the primary house square footage or footprint, maximum size of 1,000 square feet. So the idea is that that's subordinate to the primary dwelling. Now we have a minimum lot size in there, 6,000 square feet. I'll show you a couple images that will show you that really doesn't matter because you have so many other competing mathematical standards. The 6,000 square feet really, if you've got enough room to do it, why not? 6,000 is kind of an arbitrary number, so I'll kind of get into that in just a sec. And then we jump to short-term rentals, which seems to be a little bit more contentious. Originally, our package of amendments to the council or to the planning commission was to eliminate short-term rentals in all the zones, all the residential zones, increase the separation in multifamily zones from 500 to 1,000 feet, decrease the total number of short-term rentals citywide. Originally, we have a population base, 3 per 1,000 population. We recommend going to 1,000, 1 per 1,000, modify the occupancy. We added a purpose-built community section. let's see, so what we landed on in front of the council was, we took out that prohibition in single-family zones. We kept the 1,000-foot separation in single-family zones, kept the 500-foot separation in multifamily zones, kept the reduced totals from 3 per 1,000 and 1 per 1,000, changed the occupancy back to the current language is basically 2 people per bedroom plus 2 additional. Still kept the parking changes that would recognize the driveway was okay, and then put in language for purpose-built communities to allow those to go through the PE process. And then we kind of talked about philosophically what this issue is. It's really not about fundamentally how our current program works. It's really about whether or not a short-term rental is compatible within a neighborhood, whether it has impacts on housing, the housing market, and that's really what you guys need to weigh in on tonight, kind of figure that out. So just to jump back to ADUs real fast, this is just part of the Adams neighborhood. I just looked at some sample lots, plopped an ADU in the back, and you can see that it fits pretty well in most lots. Some lots it doesn't fit. And these are where the competing standards come into play. You can't exceed more than 50% of the coverage of your rear and side yards with structure. Got to meet your setbacks. You've got to be half of the footprint of the house. So this shows you where you can do it. There's another neighborhood on the west side of town where this one lot, you could put one in, but you really couldn't do it on these other smaller lots. So the 6,000 square foot is kind of an arbitrary number. I would recommend we just remove that. And then I also sent you...
That requirement's only just for detached, okay?
Yes, correct.
But not for basements?
Correct.
Okay, thank
Or
you.
like a garage conversion,
But I sent you just some information. This is our housing stock characteristics from 2020. So out of our total housing numbers, we've got about 19,000 dwelling units, which would be a single family to an apartment to a townhome, things like that. We've got about 70, this number is a little bit old, so it's probably closer to 7,500 single family dwellings. And you can kind of see going across. So really, this is the number that's impacted by short-term rentals or ADUs. This is our spreadsheet. I won't go through it. You've got a copy of this. This just shows how we keep track of the short-term rentals. We've got 21 that are licensed, 7 that are in process, continue their licensing, and then the breakdown is that 16 of those are whole home, and then 12 of those are partial. So it could be they could only qualify for 2 bedrooms, or it could be that they've done a basement. And then this is a map that shows when you apply that 1,000-foot radius over all short-term rentals in residential zones, whether it's single-family, multifamily. This shows you kind of the spatial distribution as well as the land that's available in between, obviously. So
This is the recommended radius. We're currently at 500
500 feet, right? We recommend we go to 1,000 feet for all of them.
And the reason for that?
Pardon me?
The reason to go to 1,000 square feet?
Reduces the overall density, reduces the overall saturation of the city. So at some point, it fills in, we're done. Or you cap it out at 1 per 1,000. Any questions? Happy to answer them.
Is it confusing to have, well, I guess that's on the short-term rentals, to have 2 different radiuses, one for the single-family residential zones and one for the multifamily? Is it confusing for your department to enforce that and for the community to keep it straight?
It would be simpler if it was one standard across the board for all residential zones. And it doesn't apply when we have a short-term rental in a commercial zone. We've got a number of those downtown. Those we license as a transient occupancy, transient type of use, but really we're talking about the ones in the residential zone.
What's the motivation for having 2 different options on radius with multifamily and single family?
That's what came out of the planning commission. So our standard in place now is 500 feet. We recommended to go to a greater standard to reduce the overall total numbers. The recommendation was to keep 500 feet in multifamily.
Did they have reasoning for that, or that was just their general recommendation?
Probably did. I don't remember.
New York.
I think it was just that because it's condos or apartments that
Yeah.
it's still going to be a limited number.
They're closer together to begin
Because they're
with.
closer together to begin with, so it's not going to.
So Amy.
Do you
we
foresee
have
issues, though,
Sarah
with
is
it?
in the audience if we want to ask her specific questions.
With like the border between a multifamily zone and a single family zone with, I mean, how would you address that if you have a short-term rental that goes right, wants to go on the very last house on a multifamily, but they're butting up against a single family. I just wonder, is it creating more complexity than we need?
Well, it's
With those zone
you
changes.
have to apply to whatever the zone was. So if it's 500 feet in the multifamily zone, we draw the bubble around it wherever it landed in the zone, and then vice versa.
Okay.
Other questions for Mike?
I have a couple.
Please go ahead.
When I listened to the prior conversation about this whole entire ordinance, one question came up in my head, which was, how do we assure that there is landlord approval when we allow home occupation licensing in the multifamily zone?
It would require a written approval.
So that comes with their application?
It would be required.
Okay, do we need to codify that, or is that just expected?
That's expected. So currently we allow home occupations in a multifamily property but with no customer traffic. So when we license that, we require that they provide us proof that the owner knows that they're doing it.
Okay, but now we're going to allow it with customer traffic.
That's the proposal, correct?
So how do we, okay, so I'm going to be this person who says, okay, I'm a student, I live up on campus in campus residential, I want to have my own business, I'm going to do hair. That was one that you talked about. So people are going to come, but I live in a place where every time someone's there that doesn't belong there, they get booted.
Well, that's your responsibility as a tenant of that property to ask that question of your landlord. So
Okay,
just the fact that we allow it doesn't mean you can do it.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay,
So that's the conversation you should have with your owner to make sure that you've got adequate parking to accommodate what your anticipated demand will be.
okay, all right. And then I was questioning also, we talked about, or it was discussed, that a short-term rental could not be an ADU, but then an ADU could be turned into a short-term rental.
Correct.
So I'm confused by that whole, because the short-term rental does not require an owner occupancy in the main residence, but an ADU does.
Yeah, so the current language does not allow you to have an ADU and then convert it or use it as a short-term rental. It's either this or that. The proposal is to eliminate that prohibition and say, if you go through the process to establish an ADU legally, then we would also allow you to go through the process to establish a short-term rental in that same component of your project site.
But the contradictory piece is the ADU has to be on an owner-occupied property, but a short-term rental does not.
Yeah, you still have to meet the standards for an ADU. If you want to use that as an ADU, it's got to be owner occupied. If you want to use it as a short-term rental, you don't have that same restriction in place. It doesn't mean that you can or can't do it. It just means that if you meet all those different requirements, you check all those boxes, you could do both of those.
If it's owner occupied, because then
Owner
you
occupied, yeah.
But if I was renting and I rented out my bonus room as a short-term rental, I can do that, but I can't be a renter and rent out my bonus room as an ADU. But I could be an owner occupied and rent it out as an ADU or a short-term rental.
Yeah, you can't be an absentee landowner and do the ADU,
Right.
but if you,
But you can be an absentee landlord with an ADU that you've turned into a short-term rental.
If it's a short-term rental, but not if it's used as a short-term rental, but not if it's used as an
yeah,
ADU.
you can't create the ADU originally unless you live there. So unless,
And then you move.
right,
And then it could be.
And then it can
you
be
could
a
rent-
short-term
you could
rental,
rent the
but it
home
can't be an
into a
ADU.
short-term rental
Right.
as a landlord. But you couldn't do an ADU as a landlord.
But then you could, if you sell the house, then you can have a rental and a rental.
Short-term rental, correct. You could have a rental
have a
with a
short-term
short-term
rental.
rental.
But you can't have an accessory dwelling unit rental
Correct.
correct.
because it's no longer a legal.
It's not.
It's not a legal use class.
Owner occupied.
It's no longer legal owner occupied structure.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
confusing to me.
They should still have to like comply
So-
to both requirements, I think.
And
I think they have to comply to both requirements to be able to do it.
Right.
Forget you're over here.
Right.
Now, what does Craig say
Well,
about
keep in
that?
mind, the short-term rental agreement does not transfer with the land. If I buy someone's home and they have a short-term rental, that does not, just because I buy the house doesn't mean I also automatically get the short-term rental. I have to come and reapply. So if I purchase the property intending to rent it, and I go in for that, it's not going to be, you have to reapply. It doesn't carry with the land, correct?
Yeah,
Like,
so
yeah.
same with the ADU. You have to be an owner-occupied structure to establish a legally recognized ADU through the process. You get your landlord license that establishes that. You can sell that property, and I might buy it as an investor. That doesn't mean I get those same rights because I don't live there. So
somebody's gonna come and buy the property, it already has the ADU on it. They've not been told by anybody in the course of purchasing it that they can't use them both as rentals. How do we enforce that? I don't know how that all works.
that's their due diligence. They need to do that before they buy the property.
I know it's their due diligence, but
But that doesn't mean it's gonna happen, yeah.
I mean, it just looks like you sort of have created this can of worms, but anyway.
I mean, that was the original concern we had, which was why we had the carve out around Utah State University, was for that reason. But I think one of the things that's been demonstrated is the number of people that are applying for ADUs has been pretty
Yeah, we've got
minimal.
5 since we started the program. We workshopped this with the council, 2 times over the last 2.5 years, and in the first one, we were directed to kind of keep track of, who's asking, what are they asking. And so it's not real scientific, but it's let's keep a log of who's calling, what questions are they asking, whether they're interested or not. But really, the proof is if somebody applies for it. That's really what we're looking for. But there was interest in doing an ADU, and generally it was in that exclusionary zone. The bulk of it was up in Hillcrest. And there were some questions about, well, I want to do it because I want to maximize the return on my property. I don't live there, but I have it as an investment. That obviously doesn't apply, or you can't get an ADU for that situation. So whether we see another 5, 10, 15, 20, I don't know. But the standard is you have to be owner occupied to do an accessory dwelling. That's the standard that we're sticking to.
Okay, I have 2 more questions. Sorry. So I think one of the challenges that I've had with short-term rentals, and I know I'm jumping all over, but I just wrote all these notes. One of the challenges that I've seen with short-term rentals is the fact that a neighborhood cannot come to a meeting, 30 or 40 of them I've seen have come, to say we don't want this in our neighborhood, but there's no way that that the planning commission can deny it, other than if it doesn't meet, that there's no way that they have any leeway. By the time they get to see it, you all have worked out the nuts and bolts of how many people they can have, and if they have all the right thises and that's and parking, and you say, here it is, it's ready to go. So I'm wondering, is there any way to deny an STR?
Well, so it's written into our code that it's a conditional use, which means it's a permitted use, but it requires a certain level of conditioning to mitigate for those impacts. So the way you deny is if they don't meet, if they can't mitigate for the impacts that people can show or demonstrate are truly going to come out of that conditional use or that property. The problem is the fact that you don't like it next door to you is not a thing that we can mitigate for.
I know.
It's allowed as a permitted use. And so really, there's 2 types of decisions. The planning commission has a quasi-judicial role. They review a project against what the law says. So it's plain and simple. It has nothing to do with public clamor. It has nothing to do with how many people show up to hate you and hate the project with pitchforks and tar and feather. That's your rule. That's where we get into this. What we're doing now is talking about the rules. And this is where we get into this legislative decision that you can make a decision based on public clamor.
Okay.
So this is where you can evaluate from a policy standpoint, do we want to have short-term rentals in residential areas, because we have got complaints about people not wanting them next door to them. But I will tell you from a factual basis is we have very few complaints about operational and licensed short-term rentals. So it's really not about how they operate or how they function. Occasionally, they have a family gathering with a lot of people, but so do you and so do I. But really, it's the fundamental issue between, I own a house, I bought this house, this is my biggest investment I'll ever make. A short-term rental is a quasi-commercial use, and you're allowing it to go next door. So that's the policy issue. And the planning commission doesn't make policy decisions, that's your job.
Okay.
Why is it a quasi-commercial use? Because I see it as a completely commercial use.
Well, I say quasi because it's got residential components, people live there. The fact is, it's a commercial transaction.
Business.
It's a business, correct.
It's a business, so.
But so is a rental, so is a long-term rental.
They are.
So
But it's a residential.
So the daycare, I know.
We do allow.
That's why we need to look at something.
But we could not allow short-term rentals in single-family neighborhoods. That is a decision we could make. But once we allow them to some extent, then if they meet the conditions of a conditional use permit, public clamor is not a reason for planning commission to deny it.
It's just like a judge. So they function as a judge does. They can listen to you, they can listen to you vent, but at the end of the day, is they have to review that project in front of them against the rules that are on the books.
And staff's original recommendation was not to allow short-term rentals in neighborhood residential areas.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the message we got from this group because of what you heard from folks that were being directed to you. So they showed a PC, and they can argue and yell all they want, but really their hands are tied, so they said, talk to your council, talk to your elected officials, they're the ones that makes these decisions.
I know. So, my last question is purpose-built. So we have added the allowance of short-term rentals in what we are terming a purpose-built development. But we are defining purpose-built as going through the,
Plan development overlay.
the plan development overlay process. So, do all the rules go away under a purpose-built because we're going through this other process? Or do the rules that we established for short-term rentals lay on top of that?
So, purpose-built it's called different things in different communities. I think down in the south, St. George and Hurricane, they call it resort communities or resort zoning. We use purpose-built because it's for a purpose, it's for a short-term rental purpose. So the theory is the process you're going to go through is the overlay process, which is very discretionary, it's very negotiable, and it's fairly lengthy. So if you want to set up a community that's based on recreation, it's based on secondary home market, then you'll go through that process where you're going to present your plan and schematic to the neighborhood first, planning commission, then you, and it's all conceptual. It's all, this is what we want to do, and this is where you have that give and take about, well, if you're going to do 85 homes and you want to do 85 of them as vacation rentals, then what are the trade-offs, So the short answer is yes. The standards would go out the door, but the process allows for you to actually have more in-depth, better decisions and discussions about exactly what that means as a community.
So if you have a purpose-built, I totally understand when you say, I've got 40 acres, I'm going to build a resort community, and it's totally going to be a resort community, and I'm going to do, all short-term rentals in this entire community.
Right.
I totally get that part. What I don't get is 52 people who bought lots in a fancy development, and then all of a sudden a piece of it becomes something else.
Yeah, and I think in that case, you have the ability to say this doesn't make any sense. So if somebody, pick a neighborhood in Logan that's fairly small, a little subdivision, 10 lots, they come to you and say, you know what, now we want to be a purpose-built community, and this is what we want to do. That's where I think you say, no, stop, that's really, you're trying to go circumvent the process to do something which we don't think is appropriate in that spot. But we've had the discussions with the Willow Lakes group, and they're building, or they have built lakes, amenities, and they're trying to attract kind of that mindset of you buy a house to recreate or you buy it to rent out, similar to Bear Lake. And so in that case, it makes sense. It's isolated, it's on its own, it's kind of out there segregated. So that's something we were thinking about, kind of the vision of a purpose-built community. But again, when you go through that overlay process, you have the ability to negotiate and ask and answer and say, you know what, this doesn't make sense in this spot, and this is why. So.
And it does say we may waive the
Correct,
limitations.
yeah.
It's not a must waive
Yep.
the limitations and a purpose built.
Yep, and you may see a project, a proposal that's on 10 acres, and in that context doesn't fit, and that's where you can say, you know what, it doesn't work. But then you might see one that's 10 acres somewhere else, and this makes sense.
Okay, I'm done
Okay.
for now.
We have other questions before we open the public hearing, because we might get questions from the public that.
So many questions.
Oh, sorry.
I was
No.
gonna say, I would prefer we try to limit our questions so that we can let the public weigh in as well, because that might alter our questions as well for Mike, but like, we can ask a few more. They're patiently waiting.
So under the change, owner can occupy both the primary residence or the ADU. Is that correct?
For an accessory dwelling, you bet.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, so an example of that is I've got my big giant house, right? And I've had all my kids gone through it, and I'm an empty nester. We build a little tiny house in the back. We move into that, my wife and I, and we have our kids live in there or somebody else. And that's an example you see elsewhere, where you have kind of that casita type thing. As long as you've got one of those dwellings is owner occupied, and that meets the intent of the ADU standard.
Okay.
It's a good question, Ernesto. I thought about that. Yeah.
I have no other questions or comments, Madam Chair.
I will not
right.
disrupt your intentions.
Well, I just feel like it'd be important to let people.
No, I agree.
They came
I
here to
agree.
talk to us about it. So,
Entirely, yep.
so what I would also like to ask of the audience, if we could have you come and speak kind of in the order of these three. So if anybody would like to speak first to the issue of the business zoning, I think the home occupation first, if there's anyone who would like to speak to that, so we can kind of gather the comments in chunks, I think that would be great. So if you do have an interest in speaking to the home business component.
May I ask a technical question?
Yeah.
If someone wants to speak to both ADUs
I was gonna say
and
that-
STRs?
Yeah, I'll get to that. Okay, I think if we could start with that first.
Well, no,
and
I
then-
just meant, can they
Yeah.
speak to all three?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. But just if there's one specific you'd like to speak, I'd rather try to like keep them maybe in the order of this if at all possible. 3-minute time limit. And yell it out, Craig, don't be afraid. Do you want the gavel? But yeah, especially if you are interested in speaking to that home business, because I'm assuming there might not be so many folks. But again, come to the microphone, state your name, where you live, and how many people plan to speak to this actually before we set the time limit? Who's planning to come?
This home business.
Raise your hands high so I can say.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, so yeah,
For the home business.
let's do.
And we've received a lot of
Yeah,
emails
we've
and a lot of
received a lot.
comments,
Yeah.
so thank you.
Yeah, so we'll stick with our 3 minutes. So yeah, this is a public hearing, so anyone who would like to speak to ordinance 24-18, please come to the microphone, state your name, et cetera, and let's try to do those, the home business, then the ADU, and then the short-term rental, possibly,
Or a combination of all three.
or combination. But my brain works better when I can work in chunks.
That's good.
Hi, I'm Matthew Boswell. So is this for 2418 or 2419, which is a home occupation?
This is 2418, because that does, 2418 includes 3 different areas. It includes the home occupation. The next one, which is about the home business, is a part of our code amendment. It's different. So we're going to be talking about the specifics of implementing that. right now, I know, Mike, you want to throw up, can you slide back to the slide that
This is-
addresses the
It's
home
17.
business?
Just to clarify, that the next one, 2419 is the Logan Municipal Code Amendment.
But we are talking about home occupations here.
Right. And this is the zoning land development code element.
Does that help clarify it?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Because I didn't hear anything about home occupations in this entire discussion.
Yeah, we started with
because
that.
it's later, yeah.
1736 is the first part of this ordinance when you read through it.
Okay, you guys are pretty silly when it comes to public comments and everything like that. I would wish that you guys get all of your questions out first, since you have as much time as you want for asking questions, and then let public comment, and then you have all the time in the world to ask other questions too. But we are also, but yeah, you guys are here to make meetings only 2 minutes, or 2.5 minutes long, so that's right. What is it, so this is home occupations then?
No, we're talking about the whole ordinance, but my preference was that if someone specifically wanted to speak to home occupation, to
Which is
start
the
with
one.
that, then to move to the ADU, and then move to the short-term rental. Just because all three of those are encompassed in ordinance 24-18.
C, D, and E.
No, just C, but we're looking at
Ordinance
Land
20.
Development Code 17-36 is that first section. So it's what's on the screen here.
So the ordinance includes all three of these topics are included in ordinance 24-18 if you read the full ordinance.
I'm going to be confused then in this. I'm probably talking about the wrong thing, so I apologize since I have no idea what this separation is in regards to. I'm just in opposition to short-term rentals in general. It's a can of worms that you're getting an opportunity to start pulling back and move on. So I recommend doing that. It's bad for the housing market in general. It's restrictive. We are still in the middle of a housing crisis, and it's not being addressed as if that's the case. You're just giving more leeway, like in the instance of, while it's technically not opposed that you can build housing inside of the commercial area, there are people with large, vast swaths of money that they get to leverage and delegate, out maneuver any individual that's actually here local that might just have an instance of trying to buy a single first-time home and everything like that. And again, land leaching is unethical in the first place too, so as far as running an out-of-home or in-home business too, I think that running an ADU and using it as a rental is going to be the primary intent for all these ADUs, and instead of giving leverage to land leaching, I recommend that we instead start suggesting, looking into options of partitioning the land even more into a micro situation and actually conversing with individuals and sharing the land with each other as opposed to having only a single owner that is then delegated to. There's like a common phrase where Americans don't view themselves ever as being poor, they only view themselves as being temporarily inconvenienced billionaires. And we're just giving this instance of it being temporarily inconvenienced feudal lords or the like. Anyways, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matthew. Anyone else like to speak to 24-18? You all had your hands up, so come on up and use the mic.
Don't want your job.
Name and location, please.
Eli Hopkins. I live in North Logan, but I manage properties here in Logan. Appreciate your friends. Thank you. So a few weeks ago, I had email exchanges with some of you, and one of you responded and said, quote, after making the changes to code a few years ago, STR's presence in Logan has not grown that much. Then, the Planning Commission recently met about these amendments, and they asked the city employee how many formal complaints have there been. He answered 2. Then one of them later said, why are we acting like the sky is falling? And I continued to ask that question. Going to the purpose of dividing of these, I think they should all be divided. I understand why you mixed them, but there's good argument for dividing them all. The city has sufficient regulations that have been in place since 2022. Enforcement is the issue. Many of you, when I met in person with some of you, you said that specifically to me. That is the issue. It's not the need for more of these regulations. And I propose that unlicensed short-term rentals are the reason that you're getting complaints, not the licensed ones. But again, why are we acting like the sky is falling? I promise you, as a manager, the demand for short-term rentals is decreasing, not increasing. Anybody that wants to go buy one, they're not investing their money well right now. Almost all STR owners and managers that I know here in this area are private citizens, they're not big corporations, and they want to be good neighbors. Additionally, as of yesterday, Cache Valley has 479 homes for sale, but only 161 under contract, and that gap continues to divide. We don't have a housing shortage, we have affordable housing issues. And that's a different topic that can be discussed later. If we were to take all of the houses that are being used as short terms and dump in the market, there's a good argument to say it wouldn't do anything because the under contract number continues to fall. We lost the small SAT conference due to quote, and you know this, due to Logan's struggle to quote, provide adequate lodging. So I asked, why is there so much focus and wasted time? All this energy could be used on something else. I believe it's because of bad information, unfounded fears, personal opinions, and an agenda by few. I urge you to protect property rights, stop imposing strict regulations that are expected only of short-term but not of long-term residents or renters, and allow for diverse lodging, and focus on more important issues. Please let it be traffic.
Working on that one.
Thank you, Eli.
Hi, my name's Alex Watts. I live in Logan as well, just below the Millennial Towers neighborhood over there. I do have a short-term rental with his license. It's just part of my home. I bought my home about a year ago-ish, and the only way I was able to afford that home is because I was planning on using it for that short-term rental. And so for me, it helped me to be able to afford to be able to buy a house so that I can use part of that income for it, just because of how high interest rates are and whatnot. I agree with everything that the gentleman just said as well. I think that it's something that helps individuals to be able to buy houses. I love the stuff you're doing with the ADUs because, you know, eventually maybe I might want to do an ADU instead if I don't want to spend all the effort to be able to have an STR. I think that exactly what he was saying, that as long as they're registered, there's a huge process that you have to go through to be able to get it registered. You have to let all the neighbors know. And you know, it's kind of hard, and it's like, I went to every single house, talked to them about it, and I think it's the responsible citizens that are actually getting them registered. If you do hear a complaint about them, at least I feel like you guys can call them and they'll be right on top of it. Whereas even with me having just a portion of my basement, I'll know immediately because I could hear them just right there, right? I'm super conscious about the neighbors, making sure that I gave them all my number. I'm pretty sure most of the other ones have as well. But I think it is more of, the problem would be the ones that are not registered that is the issue here. They're the ones that are most likely getting the complaints. I know a lot of them were, I guess, the bigger houses that have a lot of apartments, where I heard the last time a lot of the problems coming from. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about as well is the limits here, because before it was 500 feet by road. It wasn't in the circular radius. So I feel like that it has expanded, not even like double, but like triple or quadruple what it actually was. And I think that personally, like, I like all the other rules that were being proposed, but I think that one is being too restrictive by allowing more short-term rentals. And like you said, there are 22, I think, total out of 17,000 homes that have been registered. And so it's a very small amount that have actually gone through that process. And so I think that, honestly, I think that the way you guys have it set already is working. It's just working on those ones that are not doing the lawfully legally. So I just wanted to mention that about the limits as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
It's scary to go talk to your neighbors, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a little nerve-wracking.
Maybe your neighbors.
Depends on your neighbor.
Mary Sharp, I live in Logan. I know people that own STRs, but I don't know that they live in Logan. But their STRs are in Logan. So that's something to consider as well, because what I want to know is, what do the STRs do for Logan? What do they do for my neighborhood? I volunteer in the schools. What do STRs do for our schools in Logan? What do they do to encourage home ownership in Logan? When I looked for a place to live, which I was doing 11 years ago, I moved from the county because I love the neighborhood I live in. Just east of campus, we can walk to so many things. We're close to libraries, we're close to town, we're close to everything. We're close to the canyon. But it's a fragile neighborhood because it does need to be protected from too many absentee landlords. And owner-occupied housing needs to be encouraged. I would not have been interested in purchasing a house if an STR was next door to the house I bought or across the street. So my question is, what do STRs do for our sense of community, home ownership in our city, or help with our schools? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
I hope we're not a little jumbled here. I'm going on ADUs, if that's all
That's
right.
fine.
We're
Yeah.
switching that. My name is Zane Hundo. Hope most of you guys know my name, so I've been doing my job. I've been going around having quite a few conversations with residents within and outside of Logan, and as well just trying to get an idea of general perspective. But I do want you to know I am in favor of lifting the restrictions for ADUs within all neighborhoods. Lifting the restrictions from the ADUs will create only really a light density in our area, with flexibility for both the old homeowners and new homeowners, with making things easier for renters as well. Allowing ADUs will also help preserve, I believe, Logan, because right now we're needing more housing for people, and where we're going to create a lot of housing, that's going to be creating hotels and everything. Logan has a beautiful charm to it with all its little homes, all its cute homes. A lot of these homes do have space, though. The fear of ADUs is really false, and like I said, because not every home can do this. A lot of people aren't even interested. A lot of homes are too old. A lot of it's even too hard to transform a home with the cost. So to make the rest of us suffer, so to speak, is a little absurd. And by, like many have said, by allowing and lifting the restrictions, we can regulate it more, giving better rules in place and encouraging people instead of having people sneak under the radar, because that is where complaints start happening. That's where nobody wants to be seen, but that's where the bad happens. And I also believe that this restriction is creating a neighbor versus neighbor mentality. I feel like I'm being watched all the time as well, just trying to live my life. I think for my age, a lot of people find that crazy to own a house, but I'm just trying to live and help my fellow neighbors just as much as everybody else. So to have people also driving by, spying on me, asking me many questions, I'm just trying to live here and hang out. So lifting these restrictions would help that. So let's start opening doors with one another, growing our community, preserving it, and allowing these ADUs. Thank you guys.
Thanks.
Great turnout, by the way. Thank you all.
Evening. My name's Lisa Stoner, and I live in Logan, in the Hillcrest neighborhood. And I really haven't been able to study all the documents, so I came here to listen, but I have been paying attention as much as I can, and I wanted to reiterate my approval of lifting the ADU ban. I think that's really a valuable thing to encourage that the homes are lived in by the owners, and it encourages. I know we have a new neighbor, and we have several new neighbors in our neighborhood, and specifically they said they were going to be able to, they were wanting to have the ADU to help support the cost of the home. And so I'm so excited because it's not out for rent, it is a family, and that my children can be interacting with their children. I also wanted to just say, with my due deference to your work, it's just, this was very confusing, this particular ordinance. Trying to follow the discussion and following any kind of updates over time. I just feel like there's a lot of things that we're trying to these. I don't know why. Someone mentioned that they understood why it was together into one. I don't understand why everything was put in one ordinance. So that might be good to explain. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
Hey, it's me again, Hayden Anderson. So I won't just go on reading my thing, you know. I'm learning.
You got 3 more minutes. You got 3 more minutes.
So pretty much, it really comes down to, I've lived in my home for 4 years, and I just felt like I've been harassed. I haven't done anything illegal. I just own lots of cars. At one point, I owned 4 vehicles, not on purpose, but just find a vehicle that I like and sell it. But it's just hard when I have people coming and harassing me. And now that I got married 2 years ago and have a daughter that's 10 months old, is tough for me to want to stay in the Adams Elementary or Adams neighborhood, because I do love taking my daughter to Adams Elementary and the park. But it's hard for me to stay there when all I'm doing is feeling like I'm just being accused and having Logan City. And don't get me wrong, Logan City, the 2 gals that have came and talked to me have been amazing. And I told them to run license plates and everything to show that I do own those vehicles. But it's not just that, it's the fact that with knowing that I have neighbors 8 blocks away saying that they know where I'm going when I'm leaving, when my wife is leaving, it doesn't make somebody feel comfortable. To where if we did have these ADUs, I would feel like that this 4 years ago would not have been an issue. To where it's like, okay, I'm an owner. I worked my butt off to be able to even afford the home that I'm in, and to then try and start my family now is tough, because it's a difficult market. I'm a real estate agent. I've been doing it for 6 years, and I know my stuff. I'm not good at public speaking or reading, actually. I'll public speak, but all I'm saying is that I'm good with my numbers and things like that, to where it would be a benefit to express to younger couples to say, hey, look, if you were to purchase a home in this area, essentially, you can offset your mortgage by $500 to $800, whatever you can rent it out for, to help with the bills and things of that nature. To where it is not okay to feel the harassment that I've been feeling for 4 years. To where I would love, there's times where I almost just want to sell my house and move. But unfortunately, I couldn't afford it at the time, because I spent so much money putting it back into my property to try and make it nice for the neighborhood. And that's all we're trying to do. So I just want to say thank you. I apologize for the beginning.
No apologies.
Yes, so thank you for hearing out.
And I've been exchanging some texts just to clarify your comments about the incident where the individual allegedly harassed you 3 years ago. That absolutely was not a city employee.
Right.
And if you do feel harassed, you should call the police. But that individual
And I have
was
video
not.
proof. I have camera
Right.
system around.
I know who you're talking about, but they are not a city employee. So just so you know that. We can talk about it.
Yep, we know who you're talking about. And
Yeah.
the two inspectors that showed up are my
Yeah.
employees.
Yeah, and they were great.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
But they respond to complaints.
Right, and they're
Yeah, and that's the
official.
thing. And so I was very respectful. I said, look, this is what I'm doing,
Yeah.
and I have no issue with that. That's why I don't have,
Just so you know, that individual was not a city
It
employee.
was.
And no,
Bartlanders that they claim to be one.
we can talk later, but they absolutely, yeah, but that is not a city
That's
employee.
all, and.
Yeah, not a city employee, absolutely not.
So I apologize.
No, you're good.
No, hey.
It's just information that I received from
It
him,
is,
so.
it is unfortunate that situation happened, and I'm sorry. That's just not cool.
And it was tough because it was
Yeah.
on multiple occasions, even not even 2 months after I had been married,
Yeah.
because there was a new car in the driveway.
Yeah.
With him knowing that information is just.
I'm sorry.
And so-
My neighbor's Mason, he has 6 vehicles.
Yeah.
I get it.
And my dad.
I totally get it, yeah.
I'm trying to get to where my
Yeah.
dad was at, was like having 8 vehicles, but.
I'm gonna apologize. I'm
buy a few
sorry.
more cars.
That's terrible.
Yeah. And just talk it up just like this, it's not really,
No.
whatever it's
No,
supposed
that's
to.
perfect.
Thank you for feeling
Thank you.
comfortable to
Yeah.
come here. I know it's a little bit
Oh,
intimidating.
I'm nervous.
Thank you.
I'm always
You're welcome.
You did it twice.
Yeah, I know, but this time I was like, I don't need to read.
Yeah, third time's gonna be a charm, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hayden.
You guys all know I get nervous and stutter, and I sit up here every other week.
I'd just like to make a comment.
Your name?
Oh, sorry. Zach Cooper, I'm a resident here of Logan City.
I'd just like to make a comment in regard to the short-term rentals and how I also feel that they're restrictive. I'm actually a neighbor to a short-term rental where it is a licensed short-term rental through the city. And it's actually been very beneficial to me because I found that those who are running those short-term rentals that are licensed do care about the community. The owner is also in my same neighborhood and invested quite a bit into the home itself, as well as making sure that their neighbors were happy. And so I've never had any complaints about traffic or parking or noise. All their guests have been very considerate. They've been very helpful towards me to also help me improve my property and clean it up and give me good advice since they kind of are in that business of cleaning up properties, making them charming, and revitalizing them. And so I feel that it's a little restrictive, and I think having short-term rentals in single-family zoned areas already with the 500-foot distance, to me, I feel like is beneficial because it does sprinkle it out throughout the city. And as a neighbor, I also have sight over the short-term rental and things that are happening. And I can also be a good neighbor to how the guests are treating my neighbor's property. Also, just as a consumer, I also utilize a lot of short-term rental areas. My family members do, things like that. So having a short-term rental nearby is nice to be able to have a place to get together as a family and not have to book a hotel or areas that are going to be busier in downtown. So those are kind of my comments and my feelings about short-term rentals and how I do think that maybe the way that it's currently written is a little too restrictive on short-term rentals.
The way the proposed is too. So correct me, so you believe the 500-foot is more appropriate than
I think the
1,000?
500-foot with the
The 3 per thousand.
With the 3 per thousand.
Okay.
Is more appropriate and kind of like how it was painted. It was 500 feet per street rather than 1,000 per radius. The radius definitely takes up more acreage than what the 500 foot was.
Thanks, Zach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marilyn Griffin, I also live in Logan, and I think I'm the oldest person in the room.
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations.
I'm not sure, Marilyn.
Oh, I think I am. It's been very interesting to sit here. I have been in many a meeting about ADUs and about, not so much about short-term rentals. It was really nice to see Gail Yost here this evening, because as I was thinking about the neighborhoods, I have remembered being in meetings when she has spoken passionately about neighborhoods, and I feel passionate about neighborhoods. Our home is right smack dab in the middle. It's on 6th North and 2nd East, and you all probably pass it many times a day. I want to first of all say that I'm not opposed to ADUs. I am not a fan of the detached ADUs. The internal ADUs I think are great. I know this has been something that's been talked about for a long time, and we did exclude Adams neighborhood for a reason. And I think that some of the things have maybe been brought up this evening. I applaud the gentleman who went and introduced himself to the neighbors, because where I live, many of them just do it on the QT. And that is one of the problems that I see, and that is the fact that it is so hard, or because they do it on the QT, that the enforcement is poor. And we have problems because of enforcement.
We have problems because they do not take care of their property. I'm not against renters at all, but I am against when they become, what's the word I want to use?
Absentee?
What?
Absentee landlords? Is that what you're saying?
Well, they almost look like no one's there, or that no one's cares. They don't take care of their property, and it looks very unkept. And I know that we have a lot of renters in Adams, and that's fine, but please mow your lawn. And whether or not it's
Or at least bail it.
the landlord who doesn't live in Logan, they all, those kinds of problems exist. And somehow or other, the enforcement is just not existent. And so as you make a decision, make sure, because as I sat here and listened, and it was even more apparent at planning and zoning, it seemed to me that it was going to be very difficult to enforce what it is that you're thinking about. So to me, the enforcement is the most important part. And then make sure that everybody knows when they buy a house, whatever they do, that they know what the parameters are of that particular property. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Short-term rentals. Diane Roundy, we own a licensed short-term rental in Logan. We live in Wellsville. If you want to call that absentee, you can, but we do all of our shopping in Logan City. We drive our cars to Logan City. But we take care of our yard. Our yard is immaculate. I will tell you what we do for the schools. We have brought in over $6,000 worth of occupancy tax into the city. That's how we take care of your schools.
Property tax.
Just one house, right? Occupancy. And property. No, that's in addition.
Yeah, in addition to property tax.
Property taxes that you get out of long-term rental. So your long-term rentals, if you drive anywhere we're in Adams neighborhood, if you drive anywhere, there are long, dead lawns that are not taken care of. There are garbage cans on the street. Ours is not that. We are good neighbors. We talk to our neighbors. We alerted our neighbors. And we try to be a good neighbor. But there's something that I really want to bring up is the occupancy taxes that we bring in, that were collected, even though we're not licensed, they are still collected and submitted to the city, even though we're not licensed. So that has never been brought up in any of these meetings, with the occupancy tax that comes into the city. So I would ask your city people what they do with the taxes that they're brought into that.
6,000 is a lot.
It's split up between the state, the county, and the state.
However that is disseminated, we show it when we come in for our business licenses. We show it. So it's there.
Yeah, the portion that comes to the city is relatively small.
Like,
I don't know exactly how it's broken up, maybe 20% of that. It's
Okay.
split up between the state, the county, and the city of Logan.
okay, so I'm not sure, we just showed you when there's our taxes. It's all in there. Anyway, but that's what I showed. Your taxes.
Yeah, thank you for paying your taxes.
So, just wanted to stand up and speak positively about short-term rentals. We've had great guests, their families just like you, that want somewhere to stay and cook a meal and be together. So, that's all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Diane.
Dan Gias, I live on the island, which is the best neighborhood in Logan. Anyways,
All right, no fighting.
yeah. So the reason why I do a short-term rental is because I want to be able to plan for my future. I want to have more retirement than what I'm able to put away with my job. Short-term rentals are not a passive income. They're extremely active income. They take a lot of work. If you are to make money at them, you have to do pretty much your own maintenance, your own cleaning. It's a second job. This country was founded on people starting businesses out of their homes. I work for a company that started in a garage, and 50 years later has 6 locations and 180 employees. So it's kind of an entrepreneur, you know, getting our start, putting something away for the future. If I could afford to do long-term rental with my short-term rental, I would. But current interest rates, current costs of housing has prohibited me buying something that was currently a short-term rental and turning it back into a long-term rental. I could put it up for sale. It could be converted back to a long-term rental. Maybe somebody with a lot of money that can afford to take a loss on the property for a few years for taxes can buy it. Then I go back to, you know, you see debt bonds, you see infrastructure falling apart. Short-term rental, you have to have your property look good. You're dependent on a 5-star rating. We are pulled into that 5 stars. If you don't have 5 stars, you don't get rentals. So you have to have a nice property. It has to look good. It has to be ran very well for you to compete against the other short-term rentals that are out there. So the fears of absentee landlords, absentee people just buying the short-term rental and raking in cash is not a real thing. It doesn't exist. It is a job, and it's a second job and almost a full-time job. So discontinuing or limiting short-term rentals to just a few is really a spit in the face of anybody that wants to be a young entrepreneur, buy a place and start looking at building their future and building some retirement. Oh God, thanks guys.
Thank you, Dan.
Madam Chair. Can I step out for just a moment?
Hello, everybody. This is my first time. I'm very nervous. So I'm a small business owner in Logan City. I'm Lisa. My name is Lisa Kaup. I'm a small business in Logan City. I do cleaning and handyman work, and a lot of our contracts are with short-term rentals and long-term rentals that have ADUs. This kind of affects us in both ways. I've been able to build a company that supports my family. My husband's been able to do this with me full-time. We've been able to employ people, allow them to support their families with being able to clean short-term rentals. And I think that they definitely bring money back into the economy. They're going to our grocery stores, people that are renting them. They're eating in our restaurants. It's bringing people in here to use that kind of stuff. It's allowing people to support their families. I think that it's really important to have short-term rentals. And I do clean and maintain several ADUs that are used as long-term rentals. So I think that it's sad that they're both kind of lumped together in one thing. I kind of wish they were separated because they're a little bit different. But mostly I just wanted to come up and advocate for the short-term rentals. I think that they're an important part. A lot of my arguments have already been made, so I'm not going to beat that dead horse. But yeah, that's all that I wanted to come up and say.
All right, thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
I'm Jeff Muller from Logan. There's a lot of confusion to this. Yeah, I do not envy your job with this. So I just wanted to make a couple of comments that Logan still has a 36% homeowner occupancy. National average is about 64%. And also, if property management companies, if they actually understood what affordable housing was, we'd be in a lot better shape here. So, thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
My name is Andrea McCulloch, and I live in Logan, and I actually am very much in favor of short-term rentals. We actually have a couple of properties that we currently own and operate, and I don't live in them, but I do try really hard to improve the neighborhoods that we're in. I'm very committed to, I guess, raising the underdogs. Typically, when we go into a neighborhood and when we identify the property that we're going to kind of take on as one of our short-term rentals, it's usually the one that looks the worst and is the worst in the neighborhood, and our goal is to revitalize, reinvest, and do it in a way that it's managed with our infrastructure in a way that we have a managing body that takes the calls, that will receive any of the complaints or anything that comes, and it's like any other business. I'm sure there are some that are run poorly, but you can find that in a grocery store, you can find that in a greenhouse, you can find that, that's meant for you.
Are you talking to someone specific?
Not precisely the same, but
If you have a photography business.
But that's even a really good point. I think properties, whether it's a short-term rental or whether we're speaking to the ADU piece of things, I could get on a very strong rant about the importance of quality design, quality materials, and doing things the right way. So a short-term rental will only last as long as they do get the 5-star reviews, as long as they maintain the property. It has to look good, it has to smell good, it has to be well-appointed. And if you buy one and you don't love your neighbors, then you won't be there very long because they'll make it difficult for the people that are renting from you. So I applaud anybody that is willing to invest beyond their own footprint to help Logan be better. So I say go short-term rentals.
Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you, Andrea.
Hi, I'm Dan Everton, and I applaud these business owners who do fix up their places, and that's great. I am here, though, to speak in opposition to short-term rentals. I'd like to go back and reference the T rezone we were talking about today. So I'm glad I was in the meeting and I didn't know that this happened, but it sounds like there was a little bit of a heartburn because it was something they called a spot zone. A spot zone. They were uncomfortable because it was a spot zone. Well, you know what? You've created 21 spot zones. A commercial development in a single residential home. That's what it is. My home, I have 7 bedrooms. That thing could be I could change that into a short-term rental, and I could have 16 unrelated people there every single day of the year. Now, we're talking about 500 feet, 1,000 feet. Why? If there's no effect on the neighbors, then why are we talking about any? That you can have them right next door to each other. Why? Why are we talking about that? Because there is an effect. And we talk about, oh, we've only had 2 complaints. That's never been absolutely said, these are the complaints. I've never seen that. I've been in 3 meetings now, I've never seen that. The other thing, though, is that these fine landlords, which I'm sure they're great, the people are told to call them. So the city ain't gonna get complaints. Okay? Unless it is egregious, right? So I don't think we can say we never get complaints. And, you know, an STR, in my view, is a commercial business. It's a mini hotel without somebody at the desk. And it is receiving the benefit of my great neighborhood and all of the great neighborhoods around here. It's receiving that nice, warm, comforting, safe, calm atmosphere. They're coming in there and they are having an effect on that. I think we need to protect our neighborhoods, make them what we want them to be. Safe, great neighborhoods. For single-family residential, I think there should be some expectation, if I'm in a single residential zone, that is a single residential zone.
This time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Is it Dan? Dan. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I can.
You had your.
No, because it's, yeah, only one for this, yeah. Would anybody else like to speak to ordinance 2418 before we close the public hearing?
I have a question. If we didn't meet our 3 minutes, could we finish our?
There's no sharing of time. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. All right. One last opportunity.
This is for ADUs, STRs, and home occupation, correct?
Correct. This is for everything included in ordinance 2418. Yeah. Come on up.
Marcy Love, I live in Logan, and this is my second meeting I've attended regarding the short-term rentals. I agree with what Dan said. I agree with what a few other people have said. I've lived in my home for over 30 years. It's a beautiful neighborhood. We're part of the group that brought 40-plus people to a meeting and tried to voice our concerns on short-term rentals, and it went through because they had jumped through the hoops to make their license go through. It's very hard when you invest in a home that you raise your children in, and you want to keep that neighborhood nice, to have a mini hotel available when it's a landlocked area. There's one way in, one way out. It just makes you very anxious. It doesn't make you feel calm. And I do have a major concern with short-term rentals in a residentially zoned neighborhood. And I hope that the council will really put a lot of thought into specific areas, what is a good and what is a not so good situation, and put yourselves in those residents' position. If you were in that area, would you want a short-term rental next to you? And that was brought up in the other meeting I attended as well. It is a business, like it has been brought up. It is a business, and the people that buy these homes and don't live there invest in it, and they do run it as a business. And I can see why they want to do that, but I think we do need to protect our neighborhoods that are single-family residents and want to keep their neighborhood that way without having businesses, short-term rentals in that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. Last chance before I bring it back to the council. Cute, Russ. All right, seeing nobody else, I will now close the public hearing and bring this back to the council for action. Got a lot of information.
Can we work through these one at a time? Is that?
Sure. Yeah, before we start that though, Mike, can you just explain why all three of these types of issues are in this same ordinance? Because there seems to be some confusion that people have expressed as to why home occupation, ADU, and STR were all addressed in the same ordinance.
It's all conspiracy, trying to make it as confusing as possible. No, it's really about land development code structure. So we've got two chapters, 1736 and 1737. They're all related in some form or fashion, so it's easier to do all this under one ordinance. Doesn't mean that you can't parcel them out and talk about them separate, do this, set it aside, we're done. So it's from a structural standpoint is why we've done it this way. And then the second part of that is the next ordinance you have on your docket really deals with home occupations as they're regulated under the Logan Municipal Code, which is a different set of regulation. And that gets to a different set of issues relative to home occupation. So it's a little confusing, but.
I know. Took me a minute. Mike's probably going to be confused on this because he's new.
I'm not confused at all. I understand every bit of the land development code.
I'm on its own voice.
I did try to read it all, but
I know.
it's a
No,
lot.
it is. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that, Mike. I appreciate it. All right.
So we're okay working through this one issue at a time, is that okay?
Yep, that's what I would prefer
Perfect.
to do. Yep. So why don't we talk first about the home occupation pieces of this ordinance?
Whoever told me I can't tap on my chair. It's really.
I personally have no problem with the way the planning commission agreed to the home occupation changes.
I agree with you.
I like this one too.
No issues as well.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone's good with the parking and all of the pieces of it?
Yeah.
All good?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so that's ranging from 1736.010 through 1736.120, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, let's move on to accessory dwelling units. So this is Exhibit B in our packets, or people pull this up online to look at it before the meeting. So this starts at 1737.070. And dang, there's a lot of red in this.
A lot of red.
A lot of red. All right. Questions, thoughts, perspectives on ADUs?
I received an email, I think you guys were probably all on it, to discuss we'll just pick a random spot to start here, but discuss the 20-foot height limitation. Is there a reason for that being 20 feet? Should it be related to the house size or the house height rather than being a set ADU for an external ADU? Sorry, I should have clarified that.
Yeah, it's.
Does it make sense
similar-
to tie it to the house, or does it make
Well,
sense to have a
We
flat?
originally did, but the planning commission wanted it to match the accessory structure height. So if you build a detached garage in your back, there's a maximum height that's associated with that. So we looked at this in the same thing.
Would it be possible for a 20-foot height allotment to be taller than the primary residence? There's got to be houses that are slightly shorter than 20 feet.
Yeah, you guys can
But we wouldn't be,
come up
okay.
with whatever you want to. My suggestion was if I can build a 35-foot high house, should I be able to build a 35-foot high accessory structure? And my opinion is yes, you should be able to. Because,
To match the house.
yeah, why not? Because that's kind of that envelope of what you can build in that zone.
So the 20-foot was added by planning commission.
The 20-foot was what that group felt was adequate and appropriate in a residential neighborhood.
What did you have originally? You just didn't have a regulation on the height?
No, we did. It was tied to the height of the structure.
Okay.
And there was a maximum. I'd have to look back at what it was, but they felt that was too much. I think it was 35 feet, yeah.
But they felt it
But
was
we
too much.
could,
But we could go back.
Okay, so
no,
this is
or
under,
we could say 20 feet and but not higher than the primary dwelling.
yep, so
Or we
this
could
would be
say
in
35 feet for that.
N5, building height, it just reads now, the height of an external
Yeah.
ADU shall not exceed 20 feet.
Because
I was just wondering that.
the idea is, in my opinion, the idea is that it's a secondary dwelling. It's not meant to be,
Right, I'm just
Big and
wondering,
bold as
if
the
we say
primary
20
dwelling.
across the board, but we have a house that's 20 feet, do we want it to be 20 feet too, or do we want it to be 15? And if we have a house that's 35 feet, that's limiting it to 20 feet also makes sense.
or you say it can be 20 feet, but if the house is, if the house is 15 feet, then it can only be 15 feet.
There's some functional limitations of height as well.
Sure.
You can't, you only go so big.
I'm more worried about, if they have a taller house, why couldn't
Yeah.
they have a taller
But
ADU
again, like
as well?
James' point is.
Because it is about, it's maximum of 1,000 square feet too. It's not,
Sure.
you're not going to build something 35 feet tall if the foot.
You can have a big staircase. Is that 1,000 square foot total allotment? Or could they have?
Yep.
Okay.
For the external.
For the external, yeah, for all houses. Citywide.
So I had a question in terms of, okay, if external ADUs have to be on property that is owner occupied, how are we handling electricity, sewer, water, all of that.
Very delicately.
With respect, I mean, is it a single meter? Paul's
Yeah.
standing back there right next to the wall.
It's all single
We
meter.
don't say single meter in
Right.
the ordinance. It's all
Okay.
single
Can't put a
meter.
separate meter in.
Because I know of at least one individual who has a separate piece on his property that would technically be an external ADU, but he has 2 meters, 2 sewer charges, 2 everything.
They will.
Yeah, so it would still be
That's
charged.
still accurate.
Yeah.
So even though there's one sewer thing, one water meter, there'll be 2 bills?
Just because it's not based on connection, it's based on units. So if they convert and they have 2 units, they will have 2 sets of utility flats. Consumption charges will just be consumption. But we do have flat charges associated with residential units, and it is per unit.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
Unless we changed our rates, which council could always do. Would recommend it.
So you have 2 flat rate charges, but just 1 meter that is moderating the amount of electricity or water.
So they're not metered
So
separately.
it comes as one bill, it's not split between the 2 properties.
That's correct. We will bill 1 meter, but that doesn't preclude them from doing a sub-meter of some sort, internal or something else for their own usage.
To track, yeah.
We have lots of
Like
people
grid.
who do things like that for water, or I don't know about electricity very often.
You're telling me
How
I
can
can
they
track my kid's
sub-meter
shower.
They could put a device that if they have a sub panel for their electrical panel, they could have a device that would meter whatever electricity is going to that sub panel.
Oh, but I meant water.
Oh, what's that?
I don't know how you do water. That was my
You
question.
just have you'd have whatever feeds your ADU, there'd be a meter on it that tells you internally what you're pumping to that place. It wouldn't have anything to do with the city.
Oh, okay, okay.
I agree.
So this is part of the confusion question, in my opinion, too. Can an individual own a piece of property that has both a short-term rental and an ADU?
If it's owner occupied, can they do both?
Yeah.
So you could have a
You can have a
basement,
garage
short-term rental,
conversion and then
and
rent out your basement.
an
as short-term.
external ADU?
Sure.
Sure.
You have to-
The way the code is written now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
Have to get a license.
Yeah, you
You'd
just
have to license both of them,
be
and you'd have to live
licensed, check all the boxes for each one. So, but yeah, you could set up, and there's a lot of existing structures out there that have these weird arrangements where they've converted the basement legally 30 years ago, and they still live there, they rent the basement, call it an ADU, they want to build a short-term rental. So sure, you could do it. You could write it to say you can't do it, but the way we would interpret this is yes, you could do it.
Okay.
In an internal ADU, if I read correctly, there is no size limit?
Correct. Yeah, where the detached or the external ADU is visually, you want it visually subordinate to that primary structure. If you want to expand your existing footprint of your existing house to do an internal ADU, then there's not a limitation on that. Because it's no different than if you want to add on to your own house for your own purposes, add 16 bedrooms and 4 game rooms and whatever else. It's the same thing, as you could add on your primary dwelling with.
Just be a really small bedroom sometimes.
Or a really big house.
It would be a really small bedrooms.
Well, for a big house, big property.
I mean, you still have to follow
You
the
gotta follow
building
all
laws,
the regulations,
that, but
Yeah,
yes.
setbacks, height limitations, yeah.
But you can rent out 90% of your house internally.
So if people do external ADUs, will there be something put on their title or some limitation put on the title so that everybody will know, should it ever change hands, what the rules are?
Most likely, no. We won't record a document against the title that says they've been licensed as a short-term rental. They will have a license of record that will be available as public record.
No, I meant ADU.
Yeah, they'll have to get a license to set the ADU up, both a business license and a building permit, so that's public record that's maintained in perpetuity. but we won't necessarily record them against the property.
But if you set up an ADU and your mother-in-law is going to live there, you wouldn't have to have a business license, would you?
If you go through the process to legally establish an ADU, you need a landlord license to do that. Because you're creating a secondary legally recognized dwelling unit in your property in some form or fashion. So yeah, you can use it for your mother-in-law, but your mom may pass next year that you run it out to somebody else. It's still the same kind of relationship that you have with that structure. But to get to your earlier question is, no, we won't necessarily record something against the title of that property, telling the world that that's an ADU. We'll do that through our licensing and permitting.
Would it be appropriate to do it with the title?
I mean, we could, but I don't know if it gets you anywhere. I think if people are going to buy property, it's their responsibility to do their due diligence and ask for records, search the record to find out what's appropriate on that site. You could record the property, they're still not going to read it. I mean, that's not our responsibility to force them to read it. I mean, it's a given, we deal with that every day. But I don't think there's any benefit to us to record that. We record permits that have gone through planning commission against titles, but I don't know why we would record a license necessarily.
So if you build an ADU, there would be a permit
Correct.
attached to the property.
Right, or if you do an internal conversion or internal construction, you still have to get a building permit for that.
Okay.
If you do it legally.
Oh.
Just, yeah.
No comment.
Other questions for Mike?
You have on there recommending eliminating the 6,000 square foot. I am all in favor of that. Is that something we bring up when we're actually voting on this, or do we want to have discussion on that? I don't think that 600 square foot minimum limit. I had a discussion outside of council with Mike.
I don't know if it does, I don't know if it does anything either.
I don't see a big issue with eliminating that if we already have the lot coverage and setbacks.
Is 6,000 square feet NR6, correct?
That's correct.
And if you have a smaller lot than that, and you have a house on it, but the house can only cover how much of a lot?
Well, we don't necessarily regulate lot coverage just for a house. It's really a function of the size and the placement of the house that's on there now. So 6,000 does reflect NR6 as our standard zoning. But you'll find in some cases that even though you've got 6,000 square feet, you couldn't fit it on there because the house is scooped back, or you may have a small lot.
And it can't be in the front yard.
Yeah, it kind of regulates itself. I don't think it's necessary.
You've got setbacks, you've got coverage in the backyard, and you've got maximum size or square footage or footprint of the building. So that almost gets to the point where
It's like it's redundant.
Yeah.
So if you have a house and you're on a lot and you have a garage in the backyard, how close to the garage can you build your ADU?
5 feet.
To your garage.
Right.
And it would be 8 foot from the
Structural
fence.
separation of buildings is 5 feet. It's 8, and then you have a zoning setback on the side is 8 feet, and the rear is 10 feet.
Rear 10 feet, 8 feet on the sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a building separation is 5 feet. You can connect them, but if you go closer than 5, then you got a fire rate for wall.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like Mark said, I think it self-regulates with the lot
get
coverage and setback rules anyway.
Can I ask another question? With respect to the people that called and asked, were they calling because of the restriction around USU? Were they calling because they want external ADUs? Were they calling because they want internal ADUs? Or do you know?
I think it was a combination of all of it, so I don't know how to break it down. We've got some notes. Tanya took some notes about specifically what they were asking, but I couldn't give you a good answer on how it's broken down based on those criteria.
Okay.
Other questions for Mike?
No.
Before we start to break this down piece by piece?
I think we would suggest to take off the 6,000
Yeah, I was
square
gonna say
foot,
that's-
and I think I'm okay with the rest of it.
That'd be the only change that I would want to make. Other than that, I think it.
Any other things on ADU? Ernesto, do you have any questions on it? Jeannie, any other questions on the ADU? So what I put as my notes as points to clarify are the height and the elimination of the 6,000 square foot, but otherwise, all of the other language in that ordinance works for people. Yes?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. So are we looking at a amendment to the proposed code that the height shall not exceed 20 feet? And how do we want to phrase in there and also not to exceed the height of the primary structure? How do you want to phrase that?
I think
Or
that
Mike, what
sounds
would be
really
the
good.
most- what
I
would
think
be-
that sounds very good, just what you said.
Yeah, we can tie it to the height of the primary structure. The external ADU shall not exceed the height of the primary structure or 20 feet.
Or
whichever.
20 feet?
I don't know if, I don't know if I feel like the 20 feet needs to be there, personally. As long as it's not exceeding the
I
structure.
actually think it should be.
I think it's more consistent with what we have for other outbuildings that are allowed.
Yeah,
So I would be
and it's
comfortable
considered an
with the 20.
outbuilding, it's not considered a primary dwelling.
An outbuilding, huh? I don't have one of those on my property.
It's accessory, it's not
That
primary.
would be for an external, but
Yeah.
it's just the house, the height of the
Yeah.
house, so,
Or like an attached.
yeah. I'm okay with the 20 or the height of the house. Yeah,
Or
Whichever is lower.
yeah, whichever is lower.
Whichever's more
Yeah.
restrictive.
Whichever's lower.
Yeah, yeah, 'cause if the house is 15, then we don't want an outbuilding that's 20, so,
how high is
One
a
of those
two-story
flat roofed
house?
houses.
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's a few houses that are like half buried.
I feel like you're going to
Yeah.
craft that
Yeah.
language for us,
It's
so I can have you read it back later.
At least.
I'm good with that.
Thank you, appreciate that. And then where do people stand on that recommending the eliminate? I mean, we can,
Yeah, I just would like to eliminate the 6,000 square foot limitation, personally. But I'm not going to write code on the fly for you. so
Mike
somebody else
doesn't
can.
like that. Mike doesn't like to
I don't,
duplicate things.
you know, I
I
feel
would
like
pull
if you've got a
ChatGPT to
smaller
find
lot than that, there really isn't enough room to do it.
It's not gonna do, that's what he's saying, it's just redundant, because it's like, you won't be able to do it anyway.
But
But
I
if you met the limitations of everything else, but your lot was 5,940 square feet, right, and you wanted to do it, but you were just under that 6,000, which I think is a rare case, but it would be a really frustrating thing for that individual to be close and be able to meet it, but have a weird arbitrary.
Yeah.
However, if you have a smaller lot than 6,000, and you know already that your lot is smaller than that, it saves you the time to try to measure everything and see if I could accommodate that, because then you pretty much know that you don't have the room to do that.
Yeah.
I think that if you're in a
too.
neighborhood with smaller than 6,000 square foot lots, so you know, if you're in a neighborhood where they're smaller than that, we've approved some that are slightly smaller, you would have a greater impact putting an external ADU in your backyard toward your neighbors than you would if your lot's 6,000 square feet or bigger.
but keeping in mind you also to keep, you also have to have the adequate parking, all of those things.
Right,
So-
but I think it just makes it so that we're not having to talk to people who have smaller lots and are trying to squeeze all this in, and having neighbors that are very upset
I mean, I don't
because of
think
the
we're going to have a
impact.
clamor of 5,700 square foot lots clamoring for an ADU. I look at it as my wife and I's first house. We were just a hair over 6,000 square feet, but we had a detached two-car garage. There would have been, if I look at this, it would have been very easy for us to convert it to an ADU. It was an insulated detached garage. We could have done something like that. And sure, we were like 100, I think we were like 200 something square feet over 6,000 square foot lot on our first house. But we still had room in the backyard, there was still room, and so I could see someone wanting to do something like that, and there were other houses on our street that were very similar, detached two-car garages on sub 6,000 square foot lots that would work for an ADU. And they're in a great neighborhood, and I think it would be possible, and I just feel like I feel like that
I thought you
6,000.
said yours was bigger than that.
Ours was a little bit bigger, but we had neighbors that were slightly smaller, because it was a curvy road, so some were bigger and some were smaller, because of the curve of the road. So, I don't know, I feel like if we're already meeting the the setbacks and we're already meeting the lot coverage, there's the possibility of, and I think it's probably 8 people in Logan, but if 2 of them want to do it, I don't think we should exclude them just because they're 200 square feet smaller than the guy down the street.
Well, I'm
Personally.
gonna follow my sword for it, I don't care.
Well, that's part of it. I think it's a big deal.
Self-regulate, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's a huge deal, but I think we should allow it. If we can get rid of one part of the legislation.
I'm just
regulation.
assuming we're going to have a motion with these amendments.
We'll let
So
you make the motion.
if we could identify whether we are in agreement, then we don't have someone voting no because they really wanted the 6,000 square foot.
If we have enough changes, we may have to like have them rewrite it and bring it back.
And bring it back.
Yeah.
Which I think we're
So
going to
I
have to
don't
do
know how to
anyway.
do it, but I guess we could.
Yeah.
All right, anything
So
else on
right, so
ADUs, internal and external?
We're not changing anything with internal.
No.
Well, outside of
No, we're
allowing
getting
them
rid of-
citywide.
We're getting rid of the.
Yeah, we're making it
of
Get rid of the buffer.
of the carve out,
Of the carve-out.
like the miles.
buffer around
the
you.
buffer zone. We're
For
eliminating,
ADUs?
for internal ADUs, we're eliminating the buffer zone.
Sorry, I didn't read, I
Yeah.
spaced that
Yep,
part.
we're eliminating the buffer zone for both internal and.
The
and
buffer
detached.
zone
Yes.
of you,
Around you,
okay,
yes.
okay.
So they would be allowed throughout Adams and Hillcrest.
But we're not changing any of the requirements for internal ADUs.
Correct, we're just
Thank you.
We're just allowing
eliminating,
it.
strictly eliminating
Look
that.
at that pretty picture of that purple
zone.
lady.
Okay, and everyone's comfortable with the elimination of that zone.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Come a long way in 3.5 years on that one. So, all right,
Maybe.
Not enough.
let's move on to short-term rentals. This might have a little bit more conversation.
So I want to say that I do have some, I do understand and support the concept of commercial in a residential neighborhood. I think that is an issue to me. You know, you purchase a home in a residential neighborhood and then all of a sudden it's not. I'm going to ask a really weird question, like, I know that we couldn't ever say they can be in Ellis, but not in Wilson. Because that's, you just can't do, no, you can't.
No, we cannot.
But you could say they can be in NR6, but not NR4.
Correct.
Right.
You could say they're just in commercial, but
Or mixed
not
They can just be in
residential.
commercial.
Or
They can just be in
mixed use.
mixed use or multifamily. But we can't do neighborhood by neighborhood. But I was thinking that, I don't know where our NR4 neighborhoods are, whether that would be appropriate to make that restriction. And then I also wanted to ask the question, with that made me remember, the language now does not make a circle.
No, the language now makes a very odd line. So the way we measure it is from property following a pedestrian route. So it doesn't take into account that you might have, you live on a cul-de-sac, you have a cul-de-sac behind you, you could have 2 houses back to back that are short-term rentals because the normal pedestrian route to get around there is 1,500 feet. So this we went to is it's easier just to measure a circle around the property, kind of like what we do with, alcohol. It gives you kind of 2 different options, but this was easier just to put on a map, show a 1,000-foot radius. It's a little bit simpler for us.
And
But
it's
what
closest
you
property
said,
line.
what it says here is 1,000 feet from another short-term rental as measured from property line to property line.
Right, in a straight line, as the crow flies.
It's not, no, that's the new wording.
Right, yeah,
Right,
I'm
it's
reading
It's
it.
the radius
But
now.
we're
From property line to property line.
radius here, yeah.
So is it a radius from the middle? Is it a radius from the corner? Is it a
On the
radius?
property line.
Property line.
So,
But in general, if it's about 1,000 feet, it's going to be more of a,
Really close
it's
to.
not really a
not a
circle.
circle.
Because it's 1,000 feet from every property line.
Right, from every edge of the property.
Yeah, so if you've got a rectangle, you're going to go 1,000 feet out from each corner.
So it won't be a
like
perfect
big
circle.
rectangle.
Yeah.
This is just
Okay,
simplification.
I'm just trying to make that really clear.
Illustrative
This was
purposes only.
easier for.
You should have
Yeah, you
drawn
should have put, a big
rectangle.
illustrative purposes only.
No, I just want it,
So I will just say with this 1,000-foot, my concern with this is, I think part of the discussion has been those that are not properly licensed. And I think ultimately our goal would be to enforce the regulations and to eliminate those individuals who are choosing to operate illegally in our city. And my concern with this, with what Planning Commission brought forward is when you add in the 1,000-foot radius and you drop it to 1 per 1,000 population, that there's zero motivation for anybody who's currently operating in a legal STR to want to participate. So I'm just wondering if there is the ability, if we change the ordinance, to provide a period of time where there's a grace period, not grandfather, but there's a grace period for individuals to come into compliance prior to these regulations going into effect. So you might have areas where they are closer for a period of time, but what I'm hearing is that it's more that issue of enforcement, and that's been brought up by a variety of people. It's like, what do we do to encourage people to not do the wrong thing, but to do the right thing, to talk to their neighbors, to make sure that they're working within what the city regulations are. I don't think we want to fine people $1,000 a day for not being in compliance if it's proven that they're operating illegally. So that's just one of my thoughts is that 1,000-foot radius combined with the 1 per 1,000, where does that leave us with encouraging people to actually follow the rules?
So if everyone that was advertised, there's quite a few more advertised than are licensed, is that correct?
We can look at that, yes, and I have, and yes, there are.
Thank you, Amy.
But if there are more that are advertised than are licensed, if all of those came into compliance and were licensed, would we still be under the 1 per 1,000?
No.
Probably not. I don't know.
Definitely not.
We wouldn't be.
Definitely not?
Definitely.
I looked at the listings this afternoon. Definitely not.
Yeah.
So if it's 1 per 1,000, we can have what, 55?
55.
And there's more than 55 advertised out there.
There's more than 150 advertised out there.
Just for Logan?
Just for Logan?
Between multiple websites, yes.
Yeah. So I would rather have compliance than change because they're just going to keep doing it illegally. I think it's better to comply and enforce than change.
If you go to one per 1,000, you're definitely, it's less than is what's listed, for sure.
Right, and so, remember, the original intent of the package that was brought forward was no more short-term rentals, period, and then we would deal with the enforcement side of it. Enforcement's not as easy as people think it is. So if we don't get a complaint about a short-term rental, how do we know it's there? If we're restricted from using the listing platforms as a basis for enforcement, how do we know it's there? Why doesn't the neighbor call us? Well, because people don't do that.
Right.
And
I spoke to a gentleman today on the phone who knows of 3 on his street, and I said, why don't you call? I will give you Aaron's email, and you can email him. And he was like, I'm not going to do that. That's a weird thing to do to my neighbors and people in my neighborhood. And I was like, that's an honest, but people don't want to.
Like it,
he doesn't like it, but he also doesn't want.
So, Amy,
I understand that conflict there. I don't want to be a
if we were to say no short-term rentals in residential areas, but we gave a grace period for those who are unlicensed to become licensed, and after that grace period, then there's the enforcement, and they can't have it operate. That is one option.
yeah, so we actually talked to a representative of Airbnb yesterday kind of about that. They have a process that they'll notify people that use their platform. You know, if we say we'll give them a grace period of 120 days or whatever the right day is, they will let their people know. They won't tell us where they're at or who they are, but they'll at least pass the word on. But I don't know how we get the word out to folks to let them know that this is available. You know, people don't read a paper, they don't follow us on Facebook, whatever the right social media outlet is. There's really no way to let people know unless they're the ones that are looking for the information. So we can give them a grace period. We'll probably get a few come in. If they're smart, they'll come in. And once we find the ones that are legal, eventually we'll go through the process of enforcing it.
But I don't know whether you can do it unless you do.
All right, ban afterwards. Well, again,
Because then if for some reason we got all of them to license, we'd be up to the 3 per 1,000 anyway.
Which is our limit, which is what we've got right now.
So if then we ban it after that, then you're not gonna have any more. But you weren't gonna have any more anyway, because you couldn't have any more because of the limit. So I don't know, it's just an option. But I'm not so sure that.
Mike, can you bring up the changes for the short-term rentals? Sure. Please.
Oops. So
There you
I'll just run through those. We took out the prohibition in the single-family zone, so the NR6, NR4, NR2. And that map that I had, it showed you the distinction between NR6 and NR4, the yellow shading. We have the 1,000-foot separation in single-family zones, 500-foot separation in multifamily zones. Again, we changed the way we measure that, reduce the total numbers from 3 per 1,000, 1 per 1,000, change the occupancy language back to the original language, two people per bedroom plus 2 additional, modified the parking, 1 stall per 2 bedrooms, and the driveway's okay to use as legitimate parking stalls if you have no other option, and then purpose-built communities, we added that one.
So personally, I think having 2 different limitations, one for the single-family residential and the multifamily, it's confusing.
That's confusing.
I think I would propose we choose one, whichever it is, whichever we like best. 750 all across.
Oh my God.
700.
Compromise is not a bad thing. Or choose one. I agree. I think having 2 is.
The existing standard is 500 feet now, it's just how we measured it.
Right. But I think having 1,000 foot or 500, I don't
so no
like
differentiation between the short-term and the multifamily?
Between single-family and multifamily, no. I don't think so, personally. I don't know if anyone else agrees or disagrees, but.
Enforcing is a challenge, and I think this doesn't help to have different types of.
So I'm just going to ask a question of all of us though then. So eliminate or not?
Eliminate or not what?
Short-term rental.
In
the
residential zone.
Because we're talking about how we could tweak it. Like if people don't think we should have them, we don't need to tweak it.
Well, but the only reason they put forward no having it was because we had been hearing that people didn't want to have them.
Right. Based on the letters and the people, it seems to be more positively.
I just don't think it's as big of a problem as, I think Eli's right. It's like enforcement. And if you do the numbers, and we've got 15,000 units, Mike, how many units in?
19,000.
19,000? Okay, so if we do 150, that is 0.006% of our houses are short-term rentals.
But
That
I
is a
was,
small percentage.
it's not
Close to 1%.
It's not insignificant though.
No, it's
But
not.
if we
I've
want
got plenty in my neighborhood, so I know
if we want to bring people into compliance though, we have to figure out a way to make that happen. And there is, if we say, okay, we have enough out there that we know would meet our minimums, maybe we say then that's all more we have, that's all we're going to have.
That's what I'm okay with that, with what we've got right now, because that's going to hit our minimum.
But we have to say, you have a grace period. We have to do like carrot and stick kind of thing in order to get there.
Big stick.
And the only way I can see that we can do that is to say we're going to have no more. But
which would be the 3 per 1,000.
3 per 1,000.
But we're going to have no more, but we'll give this grace period for those who are operating without a license to come into compliance. And then when that time is up, there aren't any more after that.
Ever.
Well,
unless someone gets rid of it.
Until somebody drops.
Somebody drops.
Right.
Until a license becomes available.
Right.
Then it'll become like liquor licenses and people.
I think the limitations we put on last time were like sufficient. I don't think it's a
But
problem.
we don't have any sticks.
Yeah, we just need to be able to enforce it, so.
We don't have any carrots either.
Yeah.
Or any sticks.
And we don't know how many of those that are not licensed all even would qualify under our.
I would say a good,
Based
I
on
would say
their
a good portion.
proximity,
Yeah.
based on
Yeah, I would say.
Well, but if you
compliance with
said,
fire
if you
regulations.
said no, after so many days, then you would allow anyone to license one, no matter how close they are. You know, there wouldn't be a distance required, you just say there's no more.
There's this grace period.
And then, but there's a grace period that if you know, if.
Yeah, I would recommend against that.
I don't know if I love that.
I think you would I think you'd have an effective date of ordinance adoption, push it out to December 31st. And if people want to come in and apply for the CUP, get them in the door now to do it, but I don't think it's like Wild Wild West. Here are the standards. Either you meet them or you don't. Just beware that.
And we can put a delay on when we adopt this.
Right.
But not necessarily, you don't have to follow the previous ordinance.
Yeah, we can't grandfather a non-conforming or illegal use. We just can't go down that path.
I agree on that.
But yeah.
So we have the standards in place. And if you're going back to our existing standards, the only thing I would say that you change then is the way we measure that 500 feet. So if you don't like having the two distances, that's fine. But go to how we measure it. Instead of having the pedestrian route, just say it's above. Expand the rectangle. That'd be the only change. And then say, we're going to stick to this 3 per 1,000. Our population is 55,000, give or take. That's 150 of these. So it's always a moving number. But let people know you've got 90 days to come into compliance.
Figure it out.
To apply.
To apply, to go through the process, because you may not be able to meet this standard because of proximity.
I think one of the reasons that it's like the public safety idea of this is you read these stories about individuals getting carbon monoxide poisoning or problems, and because they don't have the regulations. So I agree with you, the restrictions we put on at the beginning are appropriate because they ensure the safety of people that would be coming to stay in these. And I think if we say, anyone can come in,
And our licensing protocol is pretty rigid too. I know people have said, well, they had to go talk to their neighbor. Well, that was part of the discussion early on, was making sure that people who live around this, who are most directly impacted by one, has the ability to say, I can call Jeannie because she's a property manager to fix this problem. And it's written that they've got to respond within 60 minutes.
Right.
And it's a 3 strikes rule and you're out. If they can't, if we get repeated complaints about a property, then we can revoke their licensing.
And it's also a Class B misdemeanor, so
Class
they
B
can get
misdemeanor.
fined up to $1,000
Right.
for every violation, and every day they operate it could be a violation. So they could get fined $7,000 in a week.
Right, but you heard folks, there's incentive for them to maintain these because
Right.
it's a business.
And
But then later
the
on,
business,
do we want to
it's
have
the business,
businesses
but-
in a residential?
Is it housing or is it a business?
But we
I
have
also-
other businesses. I think that's the thing, is do we want to have a hotel-like business? But we allow daycares, we allow people to have hair salons in their homes. We do allow home-based businesses.
But
One could argue.
daycare has specific regulations and people,
It's a conditional use, just like this is.
right, but it is and it is also very tightly regulated.
Yeah. But they have more traffic than.
And they have more traffic, but they have more requirements with respect to that traffic.
They got a bunch of little kids running around making noise.
I know, staying kids.
And
Hopefully clothed.
Well, I also think,
I used to live on the street with the daycare, trust me, that did happen.
trust me, I have a 5-year-old. I know it happens. I also think that there are disadvantages to allowing short-term rentals in single-family home neighborhoods, obviously, and we heard a lot of those tonight.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I also do think we hear regularly that one of the big disadvantages of short-term rentals is housing affordability, and I may have mentioned this in the last meeting, I can't remember, and I think I've talked to a few of you about this, but I have a neighbor who has a short-term rental.
you haven't turned it in.
That's not my job.
Yeah, it is.
I've told my other neighbors too. Yeah, that's on the record. Anyway, but they have a short-term rental, but they rent it out when they're out of town on another trip. And for them, and I've talked to them about it, that like it's how they afford their home. Like they would not have been able to buy the home they bought if they didn't have that supplemental income. And they could just rent out the basement as like an internal ADU. But to them, they decided that, every other month we'll go on vacation for a week and we rent it out on Airbnb. And so I do think there are, and we had the one gentleman, I think he left, that showed up tonight and he rents out a room in his house as a short-term rental. And there are people who it's helping them afford the homes. And yeah, there's maybe 150 or so in a city, but some of them are helping people afford the homes.
But how are we going to bring them all into compliance?
Yeah, that's the big question.
I'll send Aaron an email, I don't know.
No, I mean, really,
I agree with you.
because everything is skewed, because right now we have 55, we can have 150, so 100 more could be licensed, and then we still have another 100 out there that are operating illegally. So how do we bring
And that's my hesitation too, in doing a heavy increase on restrictions, is I think getting them into compliance is more important than.
I agree.
Because if we make it really, really hard, people will just do it under the table, like they already are.
But how do you bring them into compliance? What is the carrot?
How do we enforce businesses currently that just pop up and don't have a business license? I mean, how do we enforce those?
We have to hear about them
Just regular
first.
complaint-based? I mean, not short-term rentals, just businesses in general.
Generally complaint basis.
Yeah.
Unless one of our enforcement people see a business that's opened up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little more obvious, commercial space,
Right.
hey, is that
And
licensed or not?
what's the penalty?
Well, it's a
Class
can be
B
class B
misdemeanor,
misdemeanor.
100 up. Yeah.
But our goal is to get them into compliance, right? And we assume that some people just didn't know they had to have a license. It's like with speeders, and how does the police catch speeders, Everybody speeds until they get a complaint. And they set up a trap. I mean, that's kind of the system we work in.
How many people would you need to actually go into every neighborhood and knock on every door and find out, like, what kind of force would you need to?
A lot.
Our Aaron's over there shaking his head,
Kind of like,
picturing a flag.
Nor do we really want that in America.
no, I don't think we really want that. That's a really weird message.
We have a lot of people in our community that run hotels, it's like, and they're regulated and they
Right.
have to pay taxes. And, I just want it to be a fair, level playing field where, if somebody's going to rent out their house, that they're complying the same way, because we have a lot of businesses that play by the rules.
Right.
That play by the rules, and it's not fair for somebody else to run it and not have to play by the rules.
So do we feel like we are going to be prepared to vote and make a decision on this tonight? Do we want Mike to come back with additional information? Where do we want to go with this? Because it's already 8:20, and I'm feeling like
We're going to talk some
we're
more.
going to talk some more.
Yeah, I think we need to come back with some edits and some adjustments.
What edits do we want?
So we have the height edit,
Yeah.
we've got the
On ADUs,
on
height limit and the
ADUs, we've got
6,000 square foot.
and the square foot. But on this, what are we asking? Because I think to me, that's the biggest thing, is like, I want to make sure that we got to balance people's property rights and people who live there with,
I like the 1,000 square foot, 1,000.
What I would like,
Separation zone, what's the
I
term?
guess what I would like to ask is, what if community development collectively could think about what might be the carrot that would bring into compliance all of those short-term rentals that are not in compliance? Because if we were to bring all of them into compliance and they all met the restrictions that exist, we're done.
Yeah, we're maxed.
We're done.
Yeah.
But as it stands right now, we could end up way over because of the ones that are illegal.
which we're probably still not going to stop because they might be closer to each other than another one, so they're not going to come in and apply because they know they're not going to get it.
But
At
perhaps
least it would get the majority.
But I wonder, I can't, sitting here, I can't think of what that.
What that is, yeah.
All right, well, let's quickly look at this. So we've got the 1,000 and the 500, where are people at with that number?
I would do 1,000 everywhere, but that's me.
That's what Mike suggested too.
I think one number everywhere.
Question, if we did 500 with this new way of measuring, would that actually be further out
Than what we currently
than it
have,
currently is? Like how much further?
Just depends, because on the site, again, so look at this, maybe this will give you a good example, is on this block, the way we measure it now is if this person applied for short-term rental with the 500-foot radius, we would draw the strange-looking bubble around it to get out. If we do it under our current methodology, it's how you measure it along the street frontage. So in theory, this guy back here may qualify for a short-term rental based on the proximity. So the idea was just to make it easier and cleaner to put that separation in.
But now it would be, because that's sort of a weird shaped lot, it would be 500 or 1,000 feet out from all edges.
Yeah, from each corner would be measured out.
From each.
So it sets it up quite a bit further then.
Pardon
The
me?
new way of measuring would
Right.
separate it
Yep.
way more than the,
In most cases, that's correct.
In case I go 500.
So I probably would lean more towards the 5.
I would too. Yeah, I would lean more towards the 5.
I still like 750. I do.
Am I going to fall on my
Got
sword over it?
millennials. Aren't you a millennial?
What's wrong with us?
I suggest we stick with the 3 per thousand and the 500 feet measured according to the new guidelines. But
So could you put that
We need to find
back
something
up?
you will follow.
the-
See, I would,
I just want to kind of go
You
through.
want-
it.
based on what people are saying, I would be tempted to go with the 1.
Right, so that sounds like we need more discussion
Yeah,
on that.
yeah.
All right, so the total
So
number,
50's just
what
not
about-
too many.
2,000 rather than,
2 per 1,000, you
yeah,
mean?
2 per 1.
You're just taking my
It's
stick here
just
now.
going halfway, yeah.
well, I think based on the fact that when we looked at how many are there, we know what we've got. So if the goal is to get people in compliance.
Is
But that
that
would still give us room to hopefully
No.
bring some of the ones that are not.
Not all of them, but
No,
most
I
of them.
think we need to stick
A good
with the 3
number
per
of them.
thousand.
And also.
But if you have a
some
1,000-foot
of them
limit
won't.
or even a 500-foot limit and you go 2 per 1,000, I think you're going to limit that a lot with the new measuring distance they do. So some of those won't work either way, whether you have 2 or 3.
Because these are the ones that we've already licensed.
Correct.
You can see that overlap, and those are the neighborhoods.
And that's at 1,000 foot circles?
And so I would
This is an
also,
illustrative.
If we,
But it's at 1,000. Is it close?
You know, because you have, people are going to want to be either
not
close to the
close to-
university or
yeah.
close to downtown or close to the.
if we do,
This shows you what 1,000 would look like.
Yeah, I'd say this is illustrative of what 1,000 could look like.
Correct.
if we did 3 per thousand, we can do 165. If we do 2 per thousand, we can do just, over 100. And then if we're, if you do 1 per thousand, that's pretty limiting.
It is, but
But the
do we want to be that
fundamental
limiting?
issue
Yeah.
is a short-term rental appropriate in
Right.
residential area.
Is the goal to get people in compliance or is the goal to
It's
regulate
not
them
about
more?
compliance, it's about the fundamental land use issue.
Right.
I own a house, I've got certain rights. I don't have the right to set up a short-term rental, whether it's in compliance or not. I don't have that right till you grant that. to
Until
me.
we grant it to them.
And so that's really the issue is what do you think is more valuable, or can you balance both of those needs?
That's what we have to do, is find that balance.
I mean,
Find
I'll
that
walk out on my limb here and say that if I was writing it, I would not allow them in single-family zones unless they're owner occupied, but allow them in commercial and mixed use.
So have you ever gone to an Airbnb where it was owner occupied yourself and used it? Ever?
Yes, I have.
Have I? Yeah, it's been a few years.
Multiple.
Have I with my kid? No.
Right, I'm just saying, I think.
Sure,
It's
but there are people who are doing
I
it.
have multiple times in Arizona,
Um,
multiple times, yeah.
well, it would be ADUs.
It would be ADUs that you could do short term.
Yeah, well,
Right.
a lot of their communities are built up where they have a house and they have a rental attached to the house that they just rent out.
They-
'Cause
they
it's a-
attach
It's a
the
rental,
ADUs.
it's a rental community, yeah, it's just different.
All right, can we go back to the, what
Amy
planning
brushes
commission?
that aside.
No, I just want to try to work through this so we're not here till midnight.
I say 3 per thousand, 500 feet measured. I'm gonna just say
Okay.
exactly what I said before, so.
All right, so occupancy. the current language as stands, 2 bedrooms plus 2, if we go with short-term rentals?
Two individuals per bedroom plus
Plus 2.
additional 2.
Plus 2. Yes, no? Still
And
comfortable?
that's overnight occupancy?
That's not party occupancy.
Yeah, that's overnight.
That's not party
Yeah,
occupancy.
that's overnight.
Which I know we got an email that had some of those.
Correct.
Because I do.
But you know what, that's going to be a noise ordinance, that's going to be whatever. So if I've
The
got,
nuisance ordinance issue.
if I've got 50 people that show up and it's out of control, that's going to be a call. It's a noise ordinance. Parking, okay with that and with the purpose-built communities?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
If we do this, everything
Are
on
you me
there.
liking or that liking? I
I'm
never
sorry.
know.
I'm just trying to make sure we've addressed those things because
You
we
brushed
still,
mine under the rug.
whatever, we still need to get to the fundamental question. Are we eliminating, as you said, what are we going to allow? So
Is that where is that your question?
I'm just saying, like, the pieces of the ordinance, if we allow it, are we okay with what's up there as the pieces of the ordinance if we allow short-term rentals?
You
The
put
occupancy, the
500.
parking changes, the purpose-built communities, the separation.
You're keeping the 2
and numbers.
distances, you're keeping the 3, or you're going to the 1?
If we go with the 3,
Okay, let's just clarify.
Yeah.
Jeannie, you had a comment that I interrupted twice.
Well, it's fine.
It's getting late.
She's trying to figure out her carrot still.
I think,
I really
I
didn't
voiced, I think, what the changes that I would,
so 2 per 1,000
2 per 1,000 and 500
and 500.
all across.
All across.
It sounds like we're going to have to visit with community development and figure out what we're okay with, yeah. Yeah. So I think we all have different ideas.
Well, and we're probably we could have a vote where we're not all in agreement.
Or we split out,
Just want
yeah.
to try to figure out how do we get to
Get to that.
that fundamental of how are we addressing short-term rentals? So if we're
I
trying to
just don't-
minimize the number in
so-
our community, 1 per 1,000, and 1,000 feet is going to minimize the number of short-term rentals in our community.
That's correct. And I think that if we don't, I mean, what we are hearing, we're hearing a couple of different things. We're hearing that, yes, they are very well maintained. But we're also hearing that there are more of them than we know.
Yeah.
And we're also hearing that they're not benefiting the community, schools and things like that, which if they're not licensed, they're definitely not, because they're not paying any of their taxes.
Airbnb
They would
collects
still
it,
pay
right?
those
If they're on a
taxes.
platform, they're
Rich.
paying taxes, whether they're
We would still collect
legally
taxes if they're not
authorized,
licensed.
we're still collecting money through Airbnb.
Because if they're
They
paying
both-
on the website and booking,
Yeah.
If the website requires.
but like Airbnb and VRBO are charging those taxes, okay?
I don't know if reducing it to 1 per 1,000 would make it so that people want to become licensed.
No.
I don't know
I
if
don't think so.
that would accomplish anything
I
with
think it's
that.
got to stay.
Unless you offer a grace
They're
period.
not neighbors.
Yeah, they're not neighbors.
They're not
They're not
neighbors that you're
neighbors,
going to
but-
get to know and.
Yeah, unless you offer a grace period before you implement that.
But that's only applicable if they meet the other requirements.
Well, I'm just saying that it just depends, I mean, the 1 per 1,000 addresses the community thoughts, where they feel like it's not a community, that they feel it's a business in the middle of a community and a single-family neighborhood. So limiting them does that. It helps that argument.
Or eliminating them.
Or eliminating them. But, so if you want to go with more, then maybe you're thinking, okay, yep, they're fine, they help build our communities, or whatever. Mike had that one
Yeah,
slide
yeah.
that has all those.
They do have an economic impact.
Does it
for
benefit
sure.
communities? Does it,
Oh, those are the questions that we were asking and answering.
Yeah,
And it's philosophical.
I know, it's very philosophical.
So I feel like we're cycling back to exactly what Planning Commission did and exactly where Planning Commission settled in some ways with the 1,000 feet and the 1 per 1,000, because minimize the number, but in some ways just figure out a way to motivate people that are not in compliance to come into compliance before the ordinance goes into effect.
So if we can figure out some kind of a carrot.
Donuts at community development. Get a donut when you apply. When you apply for your license.
More bag of carrots.
Or a bag of carrots. A little on the nose.
So is that kind of where we're at though? Or are we kind of back to where, like, we're planning to?
Well, I think the only change is, I think that we want to have one separation, not two.
One separation.
And you want 3 per 1,000?
I want 3 per 1 because it doesn't make any sense for us to go down to 1 because we already have more than 1. 150 is just not that much.
See, I would say 1,000 with 3.
With 3.
Or 500 with.
I'd be okay with 3 per 1,000 with 1,000 radius. I just feel like we need to be able to.
Either that's 1 per 1,000 or 500.
I just feel like if we have over 150 people running Airbnbs in Logan right now.
So that's
that we-
170.
Yeah, but, I mean, we need to be able to make those
But is it,
compliant if they're going to, you know, but if they can't, then
but are
that's
the,
gonna limit it. That's
are
gonna
the
limit it.
non-compliant ones causing the problem in the communities?
Yeah, I think so.
You know, and
Yeah, if we make them compliant, then.
I think it's purity. For the people who are unhappy with short-term rentals, or whether they're compliant or not compliant, that's the issue. It's not the compliance.
Okay.
piece. Because I think the people who run them have already attested that they make their efforts to make sure that they're well-maintained, they look good,
I can think of 3 in my neighborhood that are probably within 1,000 feet of my house,
so
they're there already, yeah.
One of those,
so-
only one of those could be licensed.
Yeah, which is limiting and not limiting at the same time, so. If we stick with.
Can I complicate things more?
No, go ahead.
I still think, I guess I would be okay adding a carve out if it's owner occupied, that they could be closer. And I don't know how you would write that, but adding an exception for owner occupied.
Throw another.
A little more complexity.
So no separation requirement
separation if
there is an owner.
so that means if you own your house and you go away for 2 weeks, that's an owner occupied.
Or if you rent out a room, or if you rent out an ADU.
So if it's your primary
But if
residence.
it's your primary residence.
That's interesting.
Because I do think it does give some people more ability to afford their home. And to me, that's the only real big benefit.
Can we
of them as single
That's
family.
not a bad idea.
Can we vote on the 2 pieces and separate it?
No, they're all
You
more
wouldn't let them do it at planning commission.
No, you can.
Yeah, I think we'll do the whole
Moving
ordinance.
forward, but you can definitely get closure on a specific
Yeah, because
issue.
I think we're
I think
okay.
we have.
We're okay on number 1 and number 2.
It's just this.
I mean, I don't think
I
we're.
just don't want to vote on this and go no, and then not do the other 2 pieces, because I don't like what Mike proposed.
I don't even know which mic you're talking about. This mic or that mic? Councilman.
I was looking at him, but I meant you, so.
I figured.
So Mike, is
Never liked what I
it
proposed.
feasible to write into here that
more
if it's an owner-occupied STR, that the separation zones don't apply? Or is that like just a nightmare to administer?
If it's a primary residence.
Sure.
Sorry, Mike, I'm
Sure
not
it's a
gonna work.
nightmare, or sure you could do it?
It's gonna be both. No, we can, we'll try to craft some language. Yeah, that's fine. If you
Yeah.
want to do no separation or occupancy.
Yeah. You can bring us a couple of options. We did that another time, as I recall. We said,
Is there
if we like
anything
this,
you
we
would-
would do this, if we like this.
You would warn us about with that specific idea? I mean, you look very conflicted.
No, I'm just here
No, be
to,
honest, tell me your opinion.
I am here to work at your will. So you just tell me which way you want to go and we'll do
Do
it.
you see issues with that language?
Owner occupancy? No, we can verify it when they apply for a license. But,
Do you see issues with enforcement or any other?
well, apparently we don't do enforcement. So it
Yeah,
doesn't
we
matter.
don't enforce anyway, yeah.
No, it's just like anything else. You gotta have a clear, concise rule so that we can go out and apply it. If it's under occupancy is one of the standards and one of the tests, then when we validate licensing, we'll validate that.
And we already do with ADUs.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you guys have an issue with that, like, exception to the other rules?
I do not.
I think it's always better if it's owner occupied.
But that's the only one that we're looking at waiving is the separation, right?
Correct.
If it's owner
Yeah,
occupied.
you'd still have to meet the
Yeah.
total number, I think,
The parking,
and the parking, and,
Yeah, all the others.
not waive all the rules.
You'd be part of the total number.
What was that?
You'd be part of the total.
Yeah, you'd be part of the total number, you'd still have to meet setbacks and parking and everything else, I agree.
So there's consensus on the separation for one number?
750. I don't know why you guys laugh at it, I feel like it's
a fair compromise.
It's a fair compromise.
Are you, like, 750?
I'm not gonna follow my sword either.
I'd be okay
but I
at
just-
750.
I
think it's harder to measure.
We wanted 500.
Is that harder to measure?
No.
It's all the same to
Once you're
measure.
measuring.
If you're measuring, you're measuring.
It does make
Can we do 700?
it does make a compromise.
Rich is rolling his eyes at us.
Yeah. The numbers guy rolling his eyes, what? Yeah. I'm okay with 750, that's a compromise between
240
the 500 and 1,000, so.
I'll support 750.
Yeah, yeah, there we go. Are you okay with that, Gene?
Yeah,
We go 750?
The total number will stay at 3 per 1,000. Is there consensus on that?
Consensus
Two-
for the three?
I thought Ernesto wanted 2.
Yeah.
I thought of 2 because we obviously have more than one per
Consensus,
thousand.
yeah.
And I don't think from the extra unlicensed ones that they would all meet the requirements. And so I thought 2 per thousand would probably be enough.
Limit.
I would support 2.
Two?
We're all about compromises.
Well, I mean,
Are we gonna make all these adjustments and then
We did this 3 years ago and we're adjusting because we have like gotten different data, so.
I would accept it too.
and we all think that that's, like, this is in the best
We can-
interest of the
we
city
can
and our
adjust
residents.
again.
Like, I think it's not just the issue of compromising, it's, we all think this is in the best interest of our community to allow
Well,
short-term rentals.
Yeah, see, I'm still with there.
Yes,
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure I believe that it is.
Yeah.
in the best interest of our community with these limits. So I think
Do you want me to repeat that for you?
What I don't know
So
is,
should we go back up to the first bullet point? And
No, I think what we should do is, we should have Mike write this up. We should have a
if we're-
continuation so that we can all think that we can absorb more information, because I don't hear, like, I'll be honest, I'm a little unsettled as to whether it's a prohibit or not prohibit.
do we,
I'm leaning
does Mike need to
towards-
spend all the time to write up the language though?
It's gonna take him 10 minutes,
Okay. ChatGPT.
right? It's not gonna take that long to do.
This takes a lot of thought.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for thinking so much.
Just give me direction, that's all.
I mean, unless everybody's saying like, I 100% am ready to say like, yes, we need short-term rentals, or no, we don't. And I'm saying I might abstain.
It's a hard question. I don't know
I
if
might
I'm ever going to be
abstain. If I have to
100%
vote today, I would abstain, to be honest with you, because I'm really not.
You mean from allowing them at all, or?
Yes.
going to
Because
the
allowing with, because clearly we're looking at allowing with exceptions or not allowing at all. So these are the, allow with these rules or not allow.
So Madam Chair, let me craft the language.
Yes.
Take 2 weeks till the next meeting to kind of digest and think about what it is, the bigger philosophical issues, and then we can jump back into it when we come back. I think we've been talking in circles.
Yeah, we're talking in circles.
2 hours now on it.
Yeah.
It's really
Which is what planning commission did too.
Yeah, they struggle with it. I mean, they really do.
It's a difficult topic. We can't just-
It's
I'm
good
not
to
gonna
talk
just vote on
about,
it.
we can't talk about it outside of here, so I appreciate everybody's patience in letting us talk it out here, because we really have not had an opportunity to do that as of yet, so.
Well, and I would encourage the public that might be watching or is still here to let us know how you feel about keeping the ones we have and not allowing any more. If they can figure out, if you have any ideas about carrots to get non-licensed into compliance. If you have any of those ideas, we'd love to hear them.
Mike, hypothetically, we eliminate short-term rentals. what happens, did you say hypothetically? What happens to those that are currently licensed, have paid the licensing fees,
They
have their
stay.
conditional use permit?
They stay.
Their grandfather, unless they allow their license to lapse.
How often they would just have to renew their license annually, and as long as they never lapsed, that they technically could.
Right.
Jackson Medallion's got it.
Or you could cap it at the number that you have now.
Sure.
All right, so we do need a motion to continue this to the October 1st meeting, and then a question as to whether it would be with or without a public hearing again.
I would move that we continue this to the October 1st meeting without a public hearing.
Is there a second for that?
I think we allow the public to make a comment. I know we did.
I'll second G's motion.
Okay, discussion?
I think we should allow the public to make comments. I think we asked them, if you already made a comment, maybe don't get up and say the exact same thing, but I'm sure there are people who haven't heard or weren't able to make it tonight that might like to make a comment.
They can certainly.
I know they can. But that's my opinion.
Okay, I understand.
I would love to encourage people to write us or call us. Our phone numbers and our email addresses are on the website.
But there's something to be said to be able to come and talk
I know.
in a public meeting.
I agree.
And then, that's my opinion.
There you go.
You ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor of continuing this to October 1st without a public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I guess that's me.
Yep.
Nay.
Nay.
All right.
I'm okay continuing it.
You are.
I just wish we had a public.
And we're continuing it without a public hearing to October 1st.
Give me the side eyes
All
there.
right. I can only look at you sideways because you're off to my side.
It's a fair concern.
We've only done half the public hearings.
I know, but these, hopefully
But
these
everyone's
others will go really
This
fast.
is all administrative stuff, so.
All right. Ordinance 24.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Karen, thank you for waiting so patiently.
Where am I? How did I get in this chair?
I will say,
This is my
this is one time Teresa was way off. And for those of you in the room, please, we do have more business, so if you have a conversation, could you please take it out to the lobby?
Bang the gavel. Bang the gavel.
Folks, we still have business to conduct, so if you'd like to have a conversation, could you take it out into lobby? Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for being here.
I feel we were close.
Thank you.
I feel we were close. Agreeing on something.
We're close. We're just going to keep
Dr.
going.
Yost is going to stay with us.
All right, ordinance 2419, this is a public hearing on a code amendment related to the home occupation regulations. Aaron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yeah, just to keep it complicated and confusing tonight, we have a different set of regulations for home occupation that we wanted to discuss. This is in our business licensing section. So this is actually how we issue licenses for home occupations, not necessarily the land use rules, which was the other part we were discussing earlier. So I went over this previously. Back in 2017, state adopted a code that exempted low-impact home occupations from license fees. They also allowed us that if we exempted them completely from licensing, that we could charge an administrative fee if they request a license. And so this proposed change exempts low-impact home occupations from having to acquire a license in Logan City. They're still subject to the regulations. They just don't have to come in and apply for that license. The code allows an exempt home occupation to request a license, and then we are permitted by state code to then charge an administrative fee for that application and renewal. So that's what this code does. It exempts them from a license requirement, allows them to request a license, and then allows us to charge a fee.
Which saves you a lot of time.
It does. We have a lot of these licenses, and some will request a license, and also I'll note those home occupations that have impacts, have customers coming, have employees that we talked about and other things, they're not exempted under this. They still have to get a license.
So why, if you don't have to get a license, would you come and get a license?
A lot of it has to do with the structure of your business. If a bank or loaning agency is requiring you to have a business license, professional licensing may require you to have a local license.
Insurance.
Other insurance may require you to have a local license. So there are reasons why people come and want a license, even though we may exempt them.
Okay.
Yep.
Other questions for Aaron?
Would you, I don't know the code this well, would you still need a license for like a short-term rental or a accessory dwelling unit if it was owner occupied? If it was like, if you lived there and it was your home business, you still need a landlord license?
Yes.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, those are not regulated
Totally
under
separate
home
from license.
occupation.
I thought so, but I just wanted to clarify.
Good question. Good question.
Same price, I think.
It's the same.
You can get both.
It's the same price.
Any other questions for Aaron before we open the public hearing?
There's a big crowd for this one.
All right, so this is a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to ordinance 24-19, please come to the microphone, state your name, where you live. Please limit your comments to 2 minutes.
Dr. Gillios, what does it take to be a low-impact home occupation? What is there a list of that, or do you just decide it based on what somebody is registering for? How do you decide if it's low-impact?
Would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. So the state legislation very oddly defines it as, and I think it's an odd definition, but it's what we have to go with. It's that the impacts of the business do not materially exceed the impacts of the residential use alone. So we have to have findings essentially that what you're doing is more than just the residential use. It has some sort of impact. We often look at, are you having customers? Do you have excessive amount of deliveries? Do you have these sort of things that are materially exceed a residential use alone? So we don't have a list per se, and what we will be primarily doing is trying to exempt these. We've in the past been trying to get you to say, well, you need a license. Now we'll probably be more towards you don't need a license. And we'll have to have findings that you are materially exceeding the residential use alone.
So say you're selling essential oils, that's probably not going to require a home license because your packages are going to be small and you're not going to be having customers come to your house every day. You're not going to have large commercial delivery trucks.
I don't have a stat to point out, but I would say the vast majority, which I believe is a defensible statement, of these nearly 400 active licenses are home office. Home office with no on-site customers.
Does that answer your question, Dr. Yost?
Would that include nursery schools and preschools who have small numbers?
No.
They are impacting the...
That's a totally separate, they have a separate regulation for...
I would like to see that licensing because a lot of preschools, they make a lot of, they do a lot of advertising. But the nursery schools that are just home-based, a lot of them do not have licenses and they haven't been trained. And I don't want to stop kids from getting covered by a nursery school. But I would like to make sure that those people who are running a nursery school got training and licensing. That's why I'm asking.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Yost. Anybody else?
Hi, Matthew Palkowski, Logan Municipal. Let's see, so it exempts low impact occupations, but it's also changing the definition of what a home occupation is too, which is something that's worth looking at in my opinion. Changes it from any business activity from entered into for profit with receipts of more than $1,200 per year, conducted and operated from or in a residential premises within the city. So casual and part-time use of a home as an office from which no merchandise is sold and which there is no substantial visitation from the public for the purpose of doing business shall not constitute a home occupation as getting stricken. The reason I mention this is because I just recently got an OnlyFans account approved, so I don't necessarily have it in, I'm not using it, but, maybe, right? But this is definitely not within the lines of the current modern day online market or anything like that. You have like streaming and YouTube videos and everything like that. And there's no necessary stipulations on what exactly is going to be captured within the whole, because as soon as it's deemed by the business administration that there's a view of a business taking place, they have access to your home to investigate it and see if you are in violation and need to get a business license in regards to this. So, it's definitely, it seems like it's opening up options, but it's on the back end also widening the net that's going to be cast from being just casual, like, YouTube videos. Again, YouTube is one of the ways that many of the youth make incomes outside of, land leeching or anything like that. People actually want to, rent until they can actually get a home instead of, definitely something that you guys need to be paying attention to as far as the impacts are taking place. But yeah, anyways, thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew. Anything you want to address with what Matthew said?
I can address why we want to make changes to the home occupation definition.
Okay.
And that was because we found it extremely difficult to determine what casual part-time is in regards to home occupation. So once again, we're chasing a moving target. Instead, we decided to call home occupation, business at a home occupation, and then just exempt the vast majority of the low-impact ones from licensure. It made more sense for us administratively. As far as casting a broader net, the goal of this is to cast less of a net.
Thank you. All right, anybody else like to speak to ordinance 24-19? Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the council for action.
I'll move we approve resolution 24-19.
Second the motion.
Any further discussion or questions for Aaron? Hearing nobody. All those in favor of ordinance 24-19, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ordinance 24-19 carries. Our next public hearing is consideration of a proposed resolution modifying the business licensing fee schedule. Aaron, that's resolution 2436. Would you like to just give us a quick update on that?
Thank you. Here's the schedule here. This adds a new line for home occupation administrative fees. So this is for the low impact exempted licenses that request, exempted home occupations that request a license. It's a $50 application fee. It's a $50 renewal fee.
Thanks, Aaron. And that compared to what before, how much were we?
It was zero.
Zero. Okay. All right, any questions for Aaron? All right, this is a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to resolution 24-36, please come and do so.
So this right here, Matthew Pontuasi, Logan. This right here I view as an instance of a department trying to recoup the existence of itself with more financial grabs and everything like that. I think that the whole instance of this is regulatory while not necessarily impacting the people that have the resources available to. This is a negligible thing for well-off companies and everything like that. What else is there? I just think that there's going to be worthwhile things for you guys to look into later for seeing larger businesses that have actual in commerce locations for covering the actual funds required for the administrative fees that people that don't have the actual capital initial investment for their own property to cover this expense. I think leveraging it against people that currently don't have the money to have their own location is doing a disservice to them and inhibiting the growth of at-home companies who then can grow into an actual standalone location. Anyway, that's my perspective. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matthew. Anybody else like to speak to Resolution 2436? Seeing no one, I will bring it back to the council for action. Just a clarification, these are people who are themselves saying, I would like to get a license. It's
They
not
are,
required.
yeah, by code, they're exempt. They are asking for a license, even though they are.
But if they had to get a license, they pay $75 instead of $50.
Because they'd be required to get one.
So we're actually making it cheaper for them.
So do we need to, I mean, M1 says minor home occupation, USU, secondary use, seasonal, and M2 says home occupation, administrative fee. Would it be better to add another word like?
Well, it's still a home occupation. The minor is a business that's required to get a license, but they can still be home occupation. This is someone who has a home occupation and they don't need a license, but they want to get one.
Now, I appreciate your nuance there. It may be better to have this one listed as M1 and the other one listed as M2, because C1s and C2 go up in intensity, and these ones also could maybe be listed going upwards in intensity of use by M1 and M2.
But what I'm also saying is minor is defined elsewhere in the code, I assume.
Minor is a reference to various licenses that fit under the M1, or a minor one license, which includes impact, home occupations, secondary uses, and seasonal licenses.
But if we're calling these home occupations that they're, shoot, my brain is gone.
No, I know what you're saying. So you come in and you go like, I need a home occupation license. How do you know which one you need? Do you need a minor or just a regular home occupation?
And do we, and I want to have one more word under the home occupation administrative fee, sort of
We could
like.
say
Like
low
voluntary,
impact.
low impact home occupation?
Yeah, like.
Because we use low impact elsewhere.
Yeah, that was the word I was
So
not
would you
coming
like,
up with.
okay. So maybe we should ask for amendment to modify it to say low impact home occupation.
Because otherwise, somebody would come in and say, oh, I've got to pay a $50 administrative fee and the $75 fee.
I actually like voluntary, what you said, better than low impact, because I feel like some people may interpret minor and low impact the same way.
Yeah. Sorry, not to interrupt you guys.
So anyway, that's, I'm just,
We do.
I might be making a mountain out of a molehill, and I'm sorry.
I think clarification is always a good thing. So Aaron, which would you think? Low impact or?
Low impact is not used in the code. I take that back. We refer to them as exempt in the code.
So then I would move it, like you said, flip M1 and M2, but I would use the word exempt, home occupation administrative fee.
Yep.
So,
You've been here too
just
long.
can I ask a question? We have that within New World M1, is that correct?
Correct.
You're not going to want to go through and change.
That's a great point.
All right, so
That I
Okay,
absolutely
then we'll-
concede.
Just add exempt to the word, that one.
okay.
I
So
agree with that.
is that a motion
Yes, please.
to approve with that, with the addition of?
Yes, that is a motion to approve Resolution 24-36 with the addition of the word exempt before home occupation on line M2.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion?
Would it be M2? Is that what,
Yeah.
the best way to
They
call
just
it?
talked about how hard
Like
it
in the
would
built in
be.
the system, it would be too hard to change the number. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of resolution 24-36, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That one carries as well. Our last public hearing of the evening is resolution 24-37. This is a carry forward of capital for the water tank and other projects, along with $13,000 in funds from the state of Utah for emergency management supplies and materials. Rich, anything you'd like to share?
You covered it beautifully.
So these are funds that have already been identified and approved in the previous year's budget that are being carried forward because they were not expended because the project was not completed for the water treatment or for the water tank.
But we are using it for design as well as other costs in anticipation of bidding that out very shortly.
Okay. All right. This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to come to speak to Resolution 24-37? Please come forward. State your name, your location, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
This is just an observation. There's $13,000 funds the city will received. You need to decide if it's will received or has received.
I refuse.
Thank you, Dr. Yost.
Or received.
We'll make sure that the next agenda has the grammar check, because this is that's not part of the actual resolution, but. All right, anybody else like to speak to Resolution 2437? Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the council for action.
Move approval of Resolution 24-37.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of Resolution 24-37, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Resolution 24-37 carries.
Thanks for the reminder.
We are done with our public hearings. Our next workshop items, we have 2. The first is Resolution 24-39. This is budget adjustments. Rich, you want to walk us through those, please?
We have 4 requests. The first is a request to appropriate $125,000 of 911 radio funds that are restricted for that, or I think they're committed for that purpose. As you'll recall, I think we charge $3 for 911.
Yeah.
$1 of that is dedicated for replacement of radios. We're in the midst of upgrading some of these. This will liquidate almost all the reserves we have, but we'll anticipate getting new reserves.
Okay.
Second request is 3.806781. This is the remainder of our SLFRF COVID funds that we are dedicating toward the east-west sewer line. These are under, we do have an encumbrance, a PO out for this work. It'll happen later this year and early next year. Ish. And next is a request to appropriate $24,700 for, this is inter-fund work. The electric department did some work for our
North Valley Landfill.
North Valley Landfill, the Environmental Health Fund. And so this is a request to reimburse the electric fund's budget for overtime and personnel costs. There are other costs that are associated with equipment costs and other things like that that we're not going to reimburse, but this does reimburse their overtime budgets so that they can do the projects they were planning on. This was kind of an emergency that helped save the Environmental Health Fund some money, and they got the job done the way they wanted. And lastly, request appropriate $6,976 from the state interfund library loan program. We receive these funds each year. I think the funds have gone down.
Karen, did you stay this whole time just for that one little line? Do you want to say anything about this then?
Since you've been so diligent.
So diligent for the whole time.
Say it.
The reason the fund went down this year is because we were closed while we were moving, and so we had less interlibrary loans. Those funds will go back up again next year because we're already meeting those and surpassing that. So, but yeah, I stayed the whole time, but it was interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Listen to us discuss.
You get a donut.
My husband made waffles.
Oh!
What time are we going over?
It'll be over.
5 minutes.
All right, any questions, anything to discuss on Resolution 2439?
No other questions.
All right.
Go home, Rich.
Mike, our final workshop item.
Get out of here.
Okay, this will take probably 30 minutes.
It was extremely confusing to read.
It was. All I can say is my computer ran out of juice. We've been here for so long.
Mine's about dead too.
Okay, this is Resolution 2438.
Yeah.
This is an intent to adjust our common boundary with Providence City. So just to get you oriented, losing my brain. Gibbon Parkway Mountain Road, is this Red Fox Trace, River Heights down here, Providence on the south. There's a sliver of land right here. This is the Watterson property. This used to be Checketts.
Okay.
So there's a line right here. You can't see it on this aerial, but there's a fence line that runs right across there. So when these properties were annexed into each respective city, what they've told us is they use that fence line as a common boundary. So
They didn't pay for a survey.
they did a paper survey. So they didn't do a physical, let's go on the ground and set a post type of survey. So they just relied on different work over the years. So this has gone through the Providence city process for a subdivision right here. And it's basically been recorded. And then the recorder realized, wait a sec, there's a discrepancy in city boundary. So they in essence, have taken these 3 lots off. Well, I don't have a copy of the plat, but there's 3 lots that wrap around this that they wanted to record. But obviously they're in our city and not in Providence City. So the idea is based on our legal counsel from Craig, was to come through this process to mutually adjust the boundary so it's clear going forward where that boundary would be. And it affects these properties, sorry to jump around, basically it would follow this line, jump down, and then follow this ditch line or canal line. Currently the line is this green line, that's our current city boundary as we see it in our annexation documents. And it goes up through these properties. So it's about 5 acres in total, the entire land area that's involved. And I mean, hopefully it clears up as both cities move forward, so.
That's 5 acres we're essentially would be giving to Providence.
Yeah, this bigger chunk is a little over 4. There's a little piece here. It's hard to see on this scale, but there's a little strip there that's another 1/4 to 1/3 of an acre, and then this over here is another 1/4 to 1/3 of an acre. And all it does is provide certainty to these owners, so we can keep the boundary the way it is, but then this guy's got to get a permit from either us or Providence. We'll figure that part of it out. All the services are coming from Providence. As this plat develops out, there'll be a road connection from here, and then I think this road will also come up and connect into Logan as well.
So what is about the far right-hand piece?
Separate ownership. It's just continue that line straight across.
So it's the orange line that's now ours.
Yeah, I don't have a very good. This is the current boundary.
The blue, but it will become the bright yellow.
Yeah, basically I should have put a ribbon on here, and it'll follow this line over, and then it'll just clean up these other little boundaries right
So it'll follow the fence line.
Correct. But not on this.
And the current property line.
Well, it'll follow the property line.
It'll follow the current property line.
They did a boundary line adjustment between Checketts and Watterson to clear up their ownership considerations, and that only affected this piece over to here. This piece right here is owned by Watterson's down to the top of this subdivision. And our boundary is just north of this line, 35 feet, 40 feet, whatever the right number is. But this puts it to an identifiable surveyed line, so it's certain going forward.
Okay. Any other questions for Mike?
That was a quick 30 minutes.
That was a quick 30 minutes. All right, thank you, Mike.
Okay.
All right, that ends our workshop items for this evening. You do not have other considerations, do you?
I do have some questions here.
All right, do any council members have any other considerations?
Ernesto, would you like to go first?
Would you like to go first, Mike?
I don't know if Paul could answer this question. Got a question today from a constituent about Google Fiber. Do we have any idea at all, timeline of when they will be
finishing up?
There's never.
There's a website.
There's never.
When they started the project, they were estimating a 3-year build. They're currently on year 2. Not a full 2 years, but they're on year 2. They were hoping if they could double their current crews, that they could be done next year. So that would be the best case. Complete in 2025, sometime summer 2025.
That's what they're hoping
Summer
to
25.
do.
And that would end up being about a 24-month build. So I'd say somewhere between 1 and 2 years to answer your question concisely.
But we have restriction on doing it during the winter, correct?
We do.
Okay.
Under their current, what they're doing, they would not be able to continue as they are through the winter because of the asphalt requirements.
Okay.
We're currently working with them. They're trying to identify any and all of their work that they could, because they want to keep going through the winter.
Okay.
So they're boring when they go under and they bore it, but they don't cut the asphalt.
Okay.
They're pulling that out of all their future build in Logan and saying, let us go do all this in the winter. We're trying to work with them on that.
Okay.
Just to keep them going.
I will say that I hope that if they're going to do it in the winter, they don't park right on the intersection quite so often, because there've been many times when they've come up and you can't see around all the trucks. They've got parked around the corner.
For the intensity of what they're doing, that we believe they're doing well, but yeah, there's a lot, there's no question.
Yeah, and I mean, in winter, that makes it just that much harder.
Yeah, and I've talked to them a lot about like Logan winter versus Salt Lake winter. We've discussed that, and I don't think they believe me.
But they also
We'll
use
find out.
subcontractors, like, so hopefully the subcontractors they're hiring are people that are from this area that are aware of that.
And they've built in other areas.
Yeah.
They've built in Idaho and other places, and they're aware of it. There's work they can do, and there's work they can't do. If the frost gets too deep, they're done.
Is the intention to serve the entire city, or?
The franchise agreement lists that they will, it's worded specifically, but yes, there are some exceptions. If it's one house, 2,000 feet away, economically, it doesn't pay for them to do that. But it's listed the entire city or economically feasible, that type of thing.
Is my neighborhood economically feasible?
I would imagine so.
Hopefully.
Yeah, like a subdivision, they love that. That's where they want to be.
We're just out there on the edge.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
I should have said my consideration when people were here, but today's National Voter Registration Day. So if you're not registered to vote or you don't know, today's the day to go check and make sure you're registered to vote.
Okay.
Awesome. That is coming up, isn't it?
It is coming up. It's not that I want to talk about it.
There's restrictions, you can't register, can you register you can't,
It's like 2 weeks before.
okay.
Okay. Anybody else have any other considerations?
Burgers on me for the one person invited.
All right. Seeing nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your patience tonight. Wow, you have your good work.
That was a necessary discussion, so I'm fine with this going longer. We don't get to talk about it. No, it's like, I have no idea what everybody's excited about, so.
Yes.
Just with the municipal boundaries and everything, you just recently had the one that's on